The holiday spirit comes with holiday decorations. Sparkling lights, garlands, and snow globes are all part of it. Our furry friends like to play with them too. But did you know that this stuff has some hidden dangers? Let's take a closer look at pet safety tips in your household, both during holiday times and any other time of the year. Number 1 is tinsel. It's a go-to option to spread a celebration vibe. Tinsel is also known to spread all over the place. You might have noticed this if you trimmed a tree with it. Pets, especially cats, love such decorations. Yet, if they eat a piece of tinsel, it can cause intestinal problems. Not to mention emotional effects. The consequences can cost a lot money-wise too. Surgery to remove a foreign object can cost hundreds of dollars. Don't underestimate the appeal of a shiny object in the room, and keep your eye on your pets. Number 2 is decorative lights. Once you're done, you put them in the box, and they spend the whole year there, tangled. When you open the box next year, you'll have a hard time untangling them. But while you're unpacking, your pets can eat the lights or get an electric shock. To avoid this, you can bundle up loose cords with protective plastic covers and hang the lights in places your pets can't easily reach. Some people have a snow globe collection. They get these balls as souvenirs from tourist places they go to. Others take them out of a box with holiday decorations at certain times of the year. These fragile things can easily break. Don't ask me how I know this. Some snow globes contain ingredients that are hazardous not only to pets, but also to younger family members. Numerous veterinary sources are full of the same warning. Keep your pets away from snow globes. That being said, the liquid inside snow globes might not be just pure water. It often contains 2% ethylene glycol, and it turns out it has a sweet smell that can lure pets to taste it. Number 4 is about Christmas trees and how they can turn into pet-friendly decor. Vets say that artificial trees and garlands can be safer than real ones. These trees don't carry the outdoor scent with them, so smell-wise, they don't attract your pets that much. Here, the important part is not to buy a flocked or snow-covered artificial tree. These sprinkles, again, can be harmful to pets. If you're not into buying artificial trees, you can attach a fishing line to the tree and hang it on the ceiling to stabilize it. As for the water for the tree, your pet might want to taste it. It's best not to add aspirin or other things to this water. You can cover the reservoir with foil to keep your animals away. Lastly, you can temporarily put a large water bowl in the same room as the tree. If your pet gets thirsty, they can go to their bowl instead of the reservoir. You can consider putting a barrier in front of the tree to make it less accessible. But some cats are wild. They'll just take it as a challenge, and they'll easily get over most obstacles. Yet, most of them don't want to bother with double-sided sticky tape. You can try that. When I talked about snow globes, it included magnets too. I wonder whether magnets can be dangerous for pets. We use them for various purposes in our homes. For starters, with their help, we showcase our photos or notes on the fridge door. Our four-pawed friends can easily get their paws on it. These fridge magnets might not be as harmful as so-called rare earth magnets, though. Neodymium magnets, for example, are the real danger. These kinds of magnets are very powerful. If you accidentally pinch your body parts, they can injure you. Imagine these magnets as warriors. When they get too close to each other, they can strike with a super force to chip and shatter regular magnets. You wouldn't want that type of magnet near your pets or little members of your family. Rare earth magnets are normally used in stuff like hard disks, locks for doors, or headphones, but they're also used as toys. These magnets aren't especially toxic, so if your dog accidentally eats one of them, the magnet may leave its body in a natural way. But what if it eats 2 super powerful magnets? I don't want to get into the details of this scenario. The intestines loop back and forth in the abdomen, and if these magnets get too close to each other, yeah. Apparently, pennies made later than 1982 are also hazardous. They contain high levels of zinc. You might think, isn't zinc an essential mineral for our body? Yes, for growth, wound healing, and many more aspects. Yet, the body needs a small amount of zinc. Too much can cause poisoning. Zinc is found in many metal objects, such as bolts, zippers, and jewelry. If you live in the US, you should know that pennies minted after 1982 have zinc cores covered in copper plating. One of the most common causes of zinc poisoning in pets is these pennies. Household plants and flower bouquets can also be dangerous. Let's say you have a bouquet of tulips that you want to keep, and your cat looks so funny trying to push the vase off the table. You shouldn't let curiosity get the best of your cat. Aloe vera, Daphne, daylily, oh, the list is long. The moral of the story is, kittens are curious and shouldn't eat plants or flowers because they can be toxic for their fluffy bodies. The next one is batteries. The acidic material inside them can leak if they get blasted. Imagine your dog chewing them accidentally. Severe consequences and immediate surgery would be the next step. When I say batteries, I also mean stuff like remotes, watches, and hearing aids. They're also powered by batteries. The next item on the list is food. Yeah, I know how hard it can be sometimes to eat while your pet gives you the look, "I want to taste that too! Give me a bite, human, please!" Okay, allow me to explain the dangers so that you can resist the temptation to share your food with your bestie. Avocado is toxic to birds and rabbits. Apple seeds and almonds are bad for hamsters. One myth is that rabbits eat lettuce, but in reality, you shouldn't include some types of lettuce in their diet. For example, iceberg lettuce. It contains lactocarium. It can be harmful if your animal eats too much of it. Another myth is that cats should drink milk. Nope. Cow's milk is not good for cats because, surprise, most cats are lactose intolerant. Chocolate, garlic, grapes, and raisins can also be dangerous to pets. How toxic something is depends on several factors, like the species of your pet and how much of the potentially harmful thing the animal has eaten. At the end of the day, you know your pet better than anyone. You probably already know how long it takes them to visit their litter box or how it smells. So always be prepared. Watch your pet's behavior. Do they have a decreased appetite? It's best to play it safe. When I say pets, I picture animals like dogs, cats, and hamsters. But some people have exotic pets, such as bears, owls, or crocodiles. The Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries believes that 5,000 tigers are held by people in the United States alone. This number includes zoos, but the majority of them live with private owners. Mountain lions are also commonly seen among exotic pets. Maybe this is why from time to time, we encounter news telling us that something went wrong with private owners of wild animals. Do you have a pet? If you do, what's their name? Why not let us know in the comments?
Throwing a snowball to your friends, putting a carrot on the snow person of yours, skating, and many more. It's the snowy winter spirit. Here's some facts about snow. Surprisingly, snow can come in different colors. Let's start with yellow snow. If it starts snowing when flowering trees are already in bloom, pollen is in the air too. Besides giving you allergies, it lands on snow-covered surfaces. In this scenario, snow blends with pollen, which results in this suspiciously yellow shade. The snow clouds can carry sand particles too. Yellowish-tinged snow was seen in South Korea in March 2006. The snow got the sand from the deserts of northern China. Pollen is oftentimes harmless, but sand-caused yellow snow isn't that innocent. It's related to air pollution. When NASA's Aura satellite detected this phenomenon, weather officials warned the public about the potential risks of this golden snow. Sometimes the color of the snow looks closer to brown, not even yellow. Certain trees, like oaks, carry a lot of tannins in the bark. These are organic compounds that protect the tree from harmful bacteria and funguses. These tannins can fall to the ground near the tree. For that to happen, it first needs to rain, and then the rain should turn into snow. The moisture makes the tannins run down. Have you ever just laid on the fresh snow and opened your mouth to let those tiny flakes in? How safe is it to eat those flakes though? In most cases, it isn't. But here's a pro tip for snow eaters. The safest way to consume snow is by choosing a clean and white layer. Get some from the freshly fallen fluffiest part, and now forget about it. You never know what random show in the street may contain. Blue tinted snow is the next one on the list. A cloudy day will create darker shadows. Snow absorbs all color wavelengths. Well, almost all color wavelengths. It cannot completely absorb blue. The bottom line is that bluish snow forms due to the weather conditions. I mean, the snowflakes are actually translucent since they're made up of ice crystals. These crystals reflect light. That's why in regular cases, snow appears white to our eyes. Gray and black snow also exist. Here, I'm not talking about melted snow mixed with dirt near the roads. The one I'm referring to is created with the dust coming from the volcano. But it can be created with less exotic soot, ash, or motor vehicle exhaust. This type of snow is dirty. It might have a dusty or oily scent. If its color comes from petrochemicals, then it's probably toxic. The next one is watermelon snow. The name comes from the red and green color of the snow. Unlike other color versions, this one has a sweet and fruity scent. Different kinds of algae and bacteria produce watermelon snow. You would be very lucky to see it because it's seen during summer in alpine and coastal polar regions. The greenness comes from chlorophyll, and the redness comes from astaxanthin. This is sort of a pigment. Fun fact, some animals, such as flamingos, crabs, and salmon, also get their color from that pigment. This phenomenon is super important ecologically. When the snow melts, it mixes into the waters and becomes a food source for organisms. Snow can come in different colors, but also different shapes too. An example would be snow rollers. To me, it looks as if someone is dragging an ice cream scoop through the ground. They are rare phenomenon because they need certain conditions to form. There should be wind, but it shouldn't be too strong. Typically, 30 miles per hour should do it. Yet, it depends on the snow too. It should be snowing, and how powerful the snow falls is another issue. Snow rollers occur in open prairies or hills with no obstacles like boulders or trees. It's a combo of two separate layers of snow. The first layer is the pre-existing sheet that crashed on the ground. The second one is a fresh layer of fallen snow. Imagine snow running down from the top of an ice rink, which doesn't hold on to what's under. Then, the wind carries some snow that is sticky enough to hold on to the things on its way. As the roller moves, it continues growing. If it's windy and there's an opportunity for rolling down a hill. Now, I want to move on to other cool facts about snow. For instance, its silence. Do you know how freshly fallen snow absorbs sound? Especially if you live in a busy city, you realize it's the quieter ambiance. It literally absorbs sound waves. Think of it as a commercial sound absorbing product. Things change when it melts and refreezes. Then, the ice reflects sound waves. As a result, sound travels further. Plus, it gets clearer. It's not just us enjoying the snow. Apparently, some monkey species love it as much as we do. Japanese macaques, or snow monkeys, also make snowballs and play with them. Young macaques especially get attracted to snow. They steal one another's snowballs, then fight to get them back. Snow? Blizzard? What else? I can count some words related to snow, but the Inuit, for example, has dozens of words for snow. And Scots has 421 terms related to the snow. For instance, skelf is a large snowflake, and unbrak means the beginning of a thaw. From one point of view, there's the cold and the risk of hypothermia. From the other point of view, animal burrows or human igloos. We associate snow with cold, but it warms you up. Since snow consists of above 90% trapped air, it's a perfect insulator. We talked about snow itself, but what about snowflakes? The shape of a snowflake is bound to the air temperature around it. Researchers examined snowflakes and found out that long, thin needle-like ice crystals form at around 28 degrees Fahrenheit. They also investigated other ice crystal samples taken from different temperatures. The flakes appear to be flat and plate-like in lower temperatures, such as 23 degrees Fahrenheit. the snowflake can also appear with 6 arms, or a dendritic structure as ice crystals, and that again depends on the changes in the temperature surrounding each snowflake. Maybe you heard the saying that no 2 snowflakes are identical. A catalog of snowflakes supports this theory. One chemistry educator detected more than 30 different types of snowflakes. They are classified as column, plane, rimmed, irregular, and so on. The reason for all this variety is the path each snowflake makes to fall to the Earth. Each one of them faces a tiny bit of different atmospheric conditions on its way to the ground. All of them have 6 sides, that's for sure. But in 1988, a scientist found 2 identical snowflakes. Turns out they can be identical. Snow can be seen in deserts too. I know it sounds super contradictory. We're accustomed to thinking about smoking hot sand, cactuses, and nothingness from a desert at first glance. In Death Valley or the Sahara Desert, snow is occasionally seen. In fact, in January 2022, some parts of the Sahara Desert got covered with a white blanket. It's not unlikely to happen all the time, but it's not impossible at all. You see, on some nights, the temperatures in the desert get low. Snow needs 2 things to form: cold temperatures and moist air. Sahara put a tick on both of these conditions. Bonus fact, how long is the tallest snow figure? In 2008, Bethel town residents in the US united their forces with the people of surrounding towns to break a world record. The snow person was 120 feet tall. It took them more than 1 month to finish creating the figure. The Statue of Liberty was only a few inches taller than this figure. When we see a strong snowstorm, we call it a blizzard. That's not always so. You see, a snowstorm should meet some qualifications to be classified as a blizzard. For instance, the wind should be at least 35 miles per hour. Plus, the snow must decrease the visibility to a certain mile for 3 hours at the least. Otherwise, the snowfall can be named a snow squall or a snow burst. Do you want to build a snowman? One that won't melt and will stay with you no matter the weather? And you don't need to wait for the snow to build it either. You're intrigued, right? Then let me guide you through every step of this fun project. You should get a few things ready. Grab a pen and some paper because I'm listing all the materials you'll need. Paper clay, acrylic paints, aluminum foil, some wires, toothpicks, glue, and some brushes for applying the paint as well as giving texture to your mini figurine. Probably to your surprise, you're not only going to use paper clay to make the body parts of the little snow guy. You'll have to start with aluminum foil. Trust me, it's going to make things so much easier for you, even if you're not a professional sculptor. And not to mention, cheaper too. You'll just have to create the shape by folding the foil first. And the next step will be wrapping it with paper clay. Now, as you can guess, the smallest ball is going to be the head of your snowman and the part you'll need to work on the most. You'll want it to look its best after all. The first thing to do is to carve out small holes for the eyes. Making the mouth is simpler. With the help of your shaping tools, just make a line as a base and follow my lead to give it some details and depth. Then glue 2 teeny tiny clay balls to these holes. This will make the snowman's face look more realistic than just painting eyes on it. After all, eyes are windows to the soul. Admit it, this reminds you of some Tim Burton movie, huh? Hey, can't forget about the carrot nose. And no, we're not using real carrots here. Everything is coming together. Almost. Show your snowman style with some accessories after making his hands. Then, it's time to bring some color to his world. But heads up, this takes precision and patience. And voila! Hello, snowman! You know what? Now that you know how to make this figurine, you can put your own spin on the design or even try to create your own original characters. And who knows, maybe you can even create a stop-motion movie with them. Good luck! Can't wait to watch you walk down the red carpet at the Film Awards.
If you make a snowball and try to set it on fire using your lighter, the thing won't melt. The snow will first turn black. Then it'll start to vanish, but you'll get no water. There's nothing supernatural about this phenomenon. The snow is melting, but you don't see it because of the structure of the snowflakes. They kind of wick away the melted water, and it gets absorbed by the remaining relatively loosely packed snowball. As for the black char marks, they're simply traces of soot left by the lighter fluid. A 2017 study suggested people had accidentally created a protective bubble around the planet, all thanks to decades of using very low-frequency radio waves. They've formed an artificial cocoon that shields Earth from radiation and solar flares. Helium can make your voice go squeaky and helps your balloons float in the air. Can the stuff get even better? Yep. Try cooling it to the extreme temperature of negative 460 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just above absolute zero. That's when you'll see this gas turn into a superfluid, which means it can move without friction. In this state, it can do some pretty bizarre things. It can leak through seemingly solid materials. It can stay motionless while the container it's in is being spun. And it can even climb the walls of the said container. Water can freeze and boil at the same time. This is called the triple point. That's when a substance can be solid, liquid, and gaseous at the same time. But there's only one pressure and temperature that can make it possible. Scientists have discovered a new state of matter. It's known as time crystals. Created in a lab, they are a concept that's insanely hard to grasp. These structures repeat regularly in time rather than in space. And in 2020, scientists even claimed they witnessed two time crystals interacting. In 1 teaspoon of soil, there are more microorganisms than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, microscopic insects, algae, mites, fungi, beetles, earthworms, you name it. In other words, the soil under your feet is one of the greatest concentrations of biomass ever. Poke a hole in the side of a bottle and let a stream of water flow out of it. Then aim a laser pointer through the bottle. You'll see the beam get caught in the tiny waterfall and curve downward. It happens when the light travels through some dense material, in our case, water. Then it hits the boundary with something that has a lower density, like air, and it makes the light curve. Our moon used to have an atmosphere. Several volcanic eruptions happened on Earth's natural satellite around 4 billion years ago. They released immense volumes of gas, trillions of tons. It was so much that the gas didn't have enough time to escape into space. That's how an atmosphere was formed. Bird eggs come in all kinds of shapes, and what an egg looks like seems to be down to a bird's ability to fly. The stronger a bird's flight is, the more elliptical and pointy its egg will be. And those species which hardly ever leave the ground lay oval-shaped and rounded eggs. Plus, an egg's length always correlates with a bird's body size. If you drop an egg to the floor in your kitchen, you'll make a big mess. But it's different if you do it in the water, say at a depth of 60 feet below the surface. The pressure there is almost twice greater than at sea level, and it'll hold the egg together like a makeshift shell. The chances are extraterrestrial dust particles are lying on your rooftop. Called micrometeorites, they're less than 400 microns in size. That's about 1/3 of a grain of sand. Scientists think around 100 billion micrometeorites fall to Earth every year. On average, the ocean is as deep as 8 Empire State Buildings stacked one on top of another. This depth is even more impressive in the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench and the world ocean. There, you could fit 25 Empire State Buildings. Cold water freezes more slowly than hot. This is known as the Mpemba effect. One of the reasons, but not the only one, is that when the hot water starts to cool, its mass decreases. It happens because some water evaporates. There's less water left to freeze, and the process takes less time. On the other hand, cold water heats up faster than hot. The speed of this process depends on the temperature difference between the liquid and its surroundings. That's why cold water needs less time to absorb heat. But it doesn't mean it'll boil faster than hot water. Zealandia is a drowned continent in the Pacific Ocean. It's often described as a continental fragment or a microcontinent. Its area is almost 2 million square miles, about half as big as the US. It went underwater about 23 million years ago. New Zealand is Zealandia's largest part that remains above sea level. People are still evolving. Scientists have been tracking several millions of human anomalies. It turns out some harmful genes are slowly but surely getting filtered out of human DNA. Mercury is one of the very few metals that remain in their liquid form at standard room temperature and pressure, all because mercury atoms have extremely weak bonds between one another. Researchers claim that great apes, like orangutans or chimpanzees, can't appreciate music, like at all. Studies show they can't tell the difference even between the most opposite genres. Music is just meaningless noise to them. You'd need a drop of liquid, a state-of-the-art laser 3D printer, and a couple of hours of work to make the tiniest fidget spinner ever. Its width will be smaller than that of your hair strand. At least, researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory managed to do just that. A camel can drink up to 30 gallons of water in a bit more than 10 minutes. This water is stored in the animal's bloodstream. As for its fatty hump, it provides the camel with nourishment when there's little food around. Some sea animals, like salmon or turtles, use our planet's magnetic field to find their way home. In its gaseous form, oxygen is colorless and doesn't have any odor. But when it's liquid or solid, this substance looks pale blue. After being caught by a black hole, a star gets ripped apart by its enormous gravitational forces. Some parts of the star's remains hurtle into the black hole. The rest, in the form of a huge jet of plasma, is ejected with such force that it travels hundreds of light years away. Your lungs not only help you breathe, but they also produce blood cells. These cells are responsible for the clotting, which stops bleeding. The lungs make more than 10 million of these tiny cells per hour. Not so long ago, scientists decided the dino's family tree had to be redrawn for the first time in 130 years. Apparently, 2 species of dinosaurs had to be grouped together from the very beginning. Those were the lizard-hipped meat-eaters, like T-Rex, and bird-hipped vegetarians, such as the Stegosaurus. Only 2 letters never appear on the periodic table. Those are J and Q. Spin a ball when you drop it, and it'll fly through the air while falling. This phenomenon is known as the Magnus effect. You can see it at work in different sports, for example, tennis or baseball. Sound travels almost 4 times faster underwater than it does in the air. That's why divers often have problems with figuring out the direction of sound. Bananas contain potassium, and this element is slightly radioactive. On the bright side, you need to eat 10 million bananas before radiation can negatively affect you. There's a device that can put out a fire with the help of sound waves. It's called a sonic fire extinguisher. There are underwater lakes and rivers in the oceans. They're known as brine pools. The water in them is saltier and denser than the rest in the area. Brine pools have shorelines and sometimes even waves. Stars look as if they're twinkling because of the turbulence in Earth's atmosphere. It makes the light from the stars move in a different direction before reaching your eyes. And this looks as if the light is shaking. It takes water 1,000 years to complete its continuous journey around the world. The whole process is known as the global ocean conveyor belt. Bismuth is a brittle, shiny white metal with a pink tinge. If you melt it and then let it cool really slowly, it'll form iridescent cubic crystals. In the deserts of California, stones move on their own. Some of these sailing rocks are as heavy as 700 pounds. Most of them move in straight lines, while others create oval turns. When the wind catches small droplets of lava from active volcanoes, it carries them miles away from the vent. The droplets get stretched into super thin glass wires called hair lava. Some strands can be as long as 6 feet. The desert rose appears in arid places that occasionally get flooded. The environment keeps switching from dry to wet and back. It allows gypsum crystals to trap sand grains and form flat petals.
In case you ever find yourself in the wild in freezing temperatures without shelter, trash inside your pocket might save your life. That gum you've been carrying around for months has a foil wrapper, which is going to be your first tool to start a fire. The second tool you need is a battery. It must be in that flashlight you happen to have or some other gadget. You're going to need to cut a narrow bridge out of the wrapper. If it's any thinner, it might break without serving its purpose. One wrapper should be enough to make 3 igniters. Put on your gloves. This contraption is going to get really hot really soon. If you drop it, you'll lose your only source of fire. Attach the gum wrapper to the battery on both ends. Hold it next to some good flammable tinder. If you also have chapstick in your pocket, add some to the fire to make it burn longer. If you get stuck in the snow in your vehicle, kitty litter can come to the rescue. You'll need to shovel as much snow and ice as possible from where your tires pass, and then put a good amount of cat litter around and under the tire. After you rock your car back and forth and carefully go from drive to reverse, you should get unstuck without a problem. In case you don't have a car or a tent at your disposal, you can arrange yourself a nice and warm sleeping area right in the snow. If you're stranded somewhere in the mountains, don't crash in a clearing. Avalanches are more likely to pass here. Find some accumulated debris and broken tree stumps at the base of the clearing and set camp there. To remove snow faster and easier, cut it with a knife or a sharp branch. You're going to be working with the crusty ice layer and going in blocks and not handfuls to save time and energy. Try clearing a section roughly as large as a king-size mattress. You won't be able to survive on ice-cold ground, so once you reach the soil, you'll need to thaw it. Pick enough wood to start a huge fire. You'll need it to burn for hours to keep you warm. If there are pine trees around you, you'll easily find fat wood. It's dried wood that's full of pine sap. You can start a fire on the tree stump using the method you already know. The resin will burn for days. It can also double as a signal fire for those looking for you. Don't feel like digging a shelter in the snow? Bulrush can help you out. It's hollow and it floats and can easily be shaped into whatever you need it to be. Snow bends it down, and you can build your human nest inside it without any tools. Once you form the tunnel, bring some dry grass to insulate it. Get plenty of it to build strong and thick walls. Add more grass to the roof, and don't forget to make a grass door and leave an opening to ventilate your shelter. Poke small holes in the ceiling and in the door. When you're about to leave the house for the wilderness in the winter, don't wear cotton clothes or socks. Cotton holds moisture like a champ and loses all of its insulating properties. So, if you sweat or get soaked from the snow, cotton will make you feel even colder. Put on several layers of synthetic clothes instead, with a waterproof outer layer. Long underwear can also count as a layer. Choose woolen socks because they will suspend the moisture in the weave. If you don't have any, you can put on regular socks and plastic bags on top of them. No matter how tempting it looks, don't eat ice or snow. It can give you dehydration, as your body will need more energy to heat up and melt snow than receive from consuming it. Put some snow or ice in a bottle and between your sweater and the upper layer of clothes. Your body heat will slowly but surely turn it into a liquid. To speed things up, put snow in a bucket or pot and thaw it above your fire. You can make some pine needle tea if you collect enough of those and drop them in freshly boiled water. This drink will be packed with vitamins and antioxidants, just what your immune system needs to survive. You can make a rope for binding parts of your shelter or securing food when cooking out of pine roots. Use a stick to dig them out of the frozen ground and separate them. Split the root in two and pull the ends away from each other. This rope won't burn in your hot fire, unlike synthetic ones. To warm up the cold winter bed in your home, fill a bottle with hot water and place it in your core region under the cover. That's right, not in the toes area. The water will heat your vital fluids traveling through your body, reaching all the extremities and warming you up in no time. Avoid metal bottles so you don't burn yourself. And don't forget to crank down the lid so you don't wake up wet. You can also wrap your pajamas around the bottle before putting them on for an extra effect. That bubble wrap you were keeping in your house for months for anti-stress purposes can serve as an excellent insulation material. Spray some water onto your window and push the flat side of the wrap against it. It will now stay up and keep the heat from escaping your room and your electricity bill from growing out of proportion. If you don't have any bubble wrap at home, try asking at the furniture store if they can give you some for free. To warm up quickly when you wake up, set a timer on your coffee maker for 15 minutes before you wake up. You can also try preparing hot chocolate, oatmeal, or soup the same way. Just put the ingredients in the filter instead of coffee. If you have a thermostat in your building that's locked and won't let you crank up the heat, you can try tricking it. This appliance knows if it's cold or warm enough based on the temperature around it. So, put some ice near it, and it will feel like it's colder in your room than it actually is. Just don't put ice cubes directly on the thermostat. In case you plan your outfits for the next day, you can put those clothes in your dresser and add an electric blanket on top. Turn it on the second you wake up. Your outfit will be warm when you put it on as if it just came out of the dryer. Your toilet seat will also feel warm and nice if you put socks on it. When the news tells you there's a huge storm coming and power outages are highly likely, fill your bathtub with water. If you have an electric water pump, it won't work, and you'll run out of water soon. Since gas stations also run on electricity, fill your car tank before the storm hits to have some emergency gas. Once the storm hits and you're locked in, put on several layers of warm clothes. Thermal wear, a warm shirt, a sweater, insulated pants, and woolen socks. Don't forget mittens so the heat doesn't escape through your hands. Hang dark blankets on your windows to draw in heat. Make sure your doors and windows are closed well and put some towels under them to prevent drafts. Your basement is probably more insulated by the ground, so it could be a good place to spend the night. When the power comes back on, check all your appliances and electronics before turning on the main power switch. They must be unplugged to avoid power surge damage. As you turn the water supply back on, keep the taps on the lowest level of your house closed to let the air out from the upper taps. One of the largest apocalypses that humanity has experienced happened about 74,000 years ago on the territory of modern Indonesia. It was an eruption of a supervolcano on Mount Toba. It was also the biggest eruption on Earth over the last 2 million years. Even the tragedy of Pompeii, when the volcano Vesuvius destroyed the entire city, was not so large-scale. At the time of the Toba eruption, humanity was as close to extinction as ever. And the problem wasn't in the volcano itself, but in the consequences that came after. Some studies suggest that 3,000 to 10,000 people could survive the period after the eruption. During the disaster, Toba released millions of tons of volcanic ash and soot. This cloud spread across the sky, blocking the sun in India, Indonesia, and over the Indian Ocean. Some scientists claimed the world had been plunged into volcanic winter for several decades. Take a look out the window in cloudy weather. Do you see how gray clouds cover the sky? But still, clouds let the sunlight pass through. It was much worse during the Toba eruption since sulfur dioxide in the volcanic ash reflected sunlight. Dust and ashes didn't settle for a long time. Perhaps they flew all over the planet, destroying many living things. A lot of plants couldn't survive because of the lack of sunlight. Also, Earth's temperature dropped by several degrees, which led to new disasters. In today's modern world, the temperature doesn't affect residents of our cities that much. But for nature, even minor changes may entail catastrophic consequences. For example, plants and insects can live at the same temperature for thousands of years, but a sharp cold snap destroys them. This leads to the fact that almost all animals don't get enough food to feed their offspring. The population of all creatures in the wild is dropping. The ancient people of that time survived by hunting herbivores and gathering berries, fruits, and mushrooms. But the eruption destroyed almost all of it. Also, a lack of light caused a lack of vitamin D. As a result, people were starving and they also were pretty depressed. However, some scientists think that many people survived this period quite easily, especially those who lived on the coast of South Africa. The ocean received the most minor damage from the disaster. The tribes who lived near the water caught a lot of fish. Both versions haven't yet been proven. Scientists still try to build an accurate picture of human development after this volcanic apocalypse. About 50,000 years after the Toba eruption, when the sun had finally passed through the gray clouds and the ash settled on the ground, nature and people began to restore the previous balance. But the warm times quickly didn't start as the Ice Age had already begun, and this problem was much more severe, as it lasted for thousands of years. Decreased solar activity and planet orbit changes led to strong temperature drops. Eternal cold covered almost the entire globe, forcing all living beings to migrate and struggle for survival. Such powerful animals as mammoths and saber-toothed tigers couldn't survive the Ice Age. But Homo sapiens were able to adapt to their new weather conditions. People hid in caves, made fires, and improved their hunting skills. Therefore, in a sense, the Ice Age made humanity stronger. In the modern world, such weather can cause significant problems for the global economy and create financial crises worldwide. The last period similar to the Ice Age happened at the beginning of the 19th century. Mount Tambora in Indonesia exploded and released millions of tons of pumice, soot, and volcanic ash into the sky. People who lived on a volcanic island got the most severe damage in the first few minutes, but then the eruption's consequences began to reach the whole world. Volcanic ash again blocked sunlight and led to one of the coldest years in North America and Eurasia. This year, 1816, is better known in history as the year without summer. The ash cloud increased humidity and lowered the temperature in many areas. In the summer of 1816 in Central and Western Europe and North America, a humid climate and cold destroyed the harvest. Prices for goods rose and poor people lost access to food. Logistics and transport also suffered. People used horses to move around at that time, and since oats became expensive, many couldn't afford to keep these animals. Many believe these circumstances inspired the inventor Carl Dreis to create the world's first bicycle. Also, there's a theory that the Tambora eruption helped invent Frankenstein. Several writers, including Byron and Shelley, gathered in a villa in Switzerland where they began to write fantastic novels. Bad weather and rain outside the window inspired Mary Shelley to write a story about Dr. Frankenstein and his monster. Even now, this volcano is active, but it's not going to wake up anymore. But if it happens again, will we be ready this time? Most likely, there will be fewer consequences since we have technologies, big incubators, and greenhouses where we grow livestock, vegetables, and fruits. Of course, winter will provoke a crisis all year round, but we can easily survive it. In the 1930s, another disaster occurred, but this time it was caused not only by nature, but also by people. At that time, many countries were heavily dependent on crops. Vast territories were sown with them. People were engaged in excessive farming. Therefore, when a severe drought began, the soil was quickly depleted. The ground ran out of nutrients necessary for the growth of wheat and corn. This led to the fact that the top layer of soil was turned into tiny dust. Then, west-easterly winds hit such states as Colorado, Nebraska, Texas, and Oklahoma. They rose the dust into the air and formed thick clouds. This period is considered the most challenging time of the Great Depression. It's the Dust Bowl. It lasted 8 years and forced many people to leave their homes and move to other states. Dust storms got so strong that they blocked the sun in Washington, D.C. Whole cities were covered with rain from sand, which caused problems with breathing. Even the captains of ships sailing in the Atlantic Ocean reported polluted air. Powerful earthquakes, supervolcano eruptions, floods, fires, and hurricanes swept whole species of animals off the planet. But a human has always survived in the most challenging conditions, so don't worry about the next global catastrophe. People will handle it. We hope so. But what if some global catastrophe happens? For example, a huge meteorite falls or the atmosphere gets poisoned. In this case, it'd be best to find a remote island or fly to the moon. The main thing is to have the opportunity to return. After all, sooner or later, the apocalypse ends and Earth will be as good as new. Probably. Another option is to live in an underground bunker with large reserves of food and oxygen. About 8 billion people are living in the world. For humanity to prosper again after the apocalypse and restore its population, 1 to 500 people will be enough. There have been cases in world history when small tribes numbering a few hundred people have lived for centuries and even millennia. However, to do this, you'd have to leave megacities. Big towns only import food. They're heavily dependent on farm fields and crops. During some global catastrophe, no one would give food to the cities. Hunger would lead to complete chaos. To live well, people would need to escape from their towns and repeat the practice of those who lived in the early Neolithic period. It was about 12,000 years ago, just after the end of the last ice age. People at that time lived separately in small villages. The population of each of them was from a couple of hundred to 1,000 people. They lived independently, provided food, and made big families. In fact, it's not such a bad option after the apocalypse to grow vegetables on a small farm, eat healthy food, and enjoy nature.
It's a snowy winter night. You're inside your cozy house and watching a historical movie that takes place during the Middle Ages. As you take another sip of your hot chocolate, you can't help but wonder how the people survived the winter back then. At that exact moment, Your TV screen suddenly turns into a portal and pulls you inside. Whoa! You open your eyes to find yourself within the world of the movie you were just watching. A man approaches you and says, "Welcome to my medieval village. I am Bartholomew, and I called you here to give you an answer to your question. First of all, let me tell you that conditions became extremely harsh when the cold arrives, and not just for the northern countries. Mainland Europe takes its share of the brutal weather too. So winter is kind of a slowing down time for all of us. You see, we usually associate winter with old age and poverty because of all the changes that occur in nature during this time. For example, we can't really grow any crops when snow covers all our land. And by the early 14th century, things started to get even worse because we started seeing the first signs of what you may know as the Little Ice Age. Cold temperatures peaked. Weather anomalies and extreme events such as sudden floods or hailstorms started to occur, which added to our agony. Take the winter of 1359, for instance. Across central Italy, the snow rose to extraordinary heights. People had to throw the snow into the streets to lighten up their roofs. And because of that, some towns were completely blocked. Their inhabitants were trapped in their homes for several days. Another example of this is the winter of 1389. The snowfall was so great in the Luzerne region of France that many people's farmsteads and houses were destroyed. Bartholomew notices that you start shivering.
Ah, you were not prepared for this journey back to medieval winters, I see. Let's walk to my home and find you some warmer clothes. As you can see, I'm already wearing a cloak, a scarf, and mittens, which are all made out of wool. I also have boots that are made out of leather from a deer. Still, all these are not really enough to stay warm when one is outside. That's why we usually layer other clothes underneath them all to keep the warmth trapped. By the way, the wool can get heavy and itchy sometimes. So beneath our woolen outer clothing, we wear linen undergarments too. The linen acts as a barrier between the wool and the skin, therefore making things a bit more comfortable for us. It is also easier to wash linen clothes, and they dry way faster than woolen ones. The wealthier ones can line their winter clothing with fur, and us regular peasants sometimes use rabbit and lamb for the same purpose. It's not as glamorous, but still effective. We can also hunt some wild animals and birds with the permission of the Lord. Yet again, the sumptuary laws, in other words, consumption laws, are very clear on who can wear what according to their social standing. Take the 1363 English sumptuary law, for example. It states that the wives and daughters of craftspeople and land-owning peasants were only allowed to wear lamb, rabbit, cat, and fox furs.
You notice a weird-looking hinged metal sphere in Bartholomew's pocket and ask him what that is.
Ah, it's a hand warmer,
he says as he gives it to you.
If we are going to be outdoors for a long time, we bring one of these with us. Otherwise, one's fingers can get numb, you know. Now take a closer look at it, and you'll see that it has tiny holes on its surface. This helps the heat to escape, so that we can warm our hands without burning them once we fill it with hot coal.
That's kinda heavy, you say, and think about how lucky you are to be living in modern times. With just one click from the comfort of your home, you can order Hot Hands instant hand warmers from Amazon, and no coal is necessary. You can even put those inside your shoes to warm your toes, since they're pocket-sized, unlike this metal orb. You and Bartholomew arrive at his house. You realize that he does not take any of his outer garments off.
We keep everything on during the coldest months, because the indoor heating isn't always great, he says. As you can see, The fireplace stands here at the center of our homes, and right above it, there is a ventilation hole rather than a chimney, which causes us to lose so much of the heat. Yet again, we don't usually sleep in our outside clothes. Instead, we put bricks and stones in the fire, wrap them in fabric, and take them to our beds to warm the sheets. Wearing our nightcaps all night long also helps. And when we're not sleeping, we usually try to stay close to the fireplace as much as possible. You sure appreciate that hot water bottle of yours more now, right? And you didn't even need to cover it with a cloth, like these folks have to do. It already came with a knit cover for your convenience. And the best part is, it's much softer than a brick, and can be heated in the microwave within seconds. How rude of me! I forgot to offer you something to eat, Bartholomew says. I know I already told you winter means stillness for us, but we still need to put in some work to not starve. There's a lot of preparation to be done in advance to survive these medieval winters. First of all, we start gathering wood for the fire from as early as spring and through the summer. Then there's the food we harvest in the fall. We have to preserve that in a special way, so all will last over the winter months. The same thing goes for meat, too. The methods we use include pickling, drying, and brining. In terms of grains, cereals, and pulses, we dry them out and store them in ceramic or clay pots. We later use them for making potted stews and soups, in addition to vegetables. Basically, everything we can find goes into the pot. The most common foods we eat in our everyday lives include onions, peas, beans, lentils, and herbs such as parsley. We still have to include protein in our diet, though, and we do that by eating cheese, eggs, fatty bacon, or salted pork. In terms of fresh fruits and berries, they are hard to find during wintertime, so we preserve the ones we already picked by the air drying method, too.
You think to yourself, if only these people had a food dryer at home, their lives would be so much easier. They could use it for all the foods Bartholomew just mentioned, from fruits to meat. Then again, there's no electricity here.
I wouldn't want you to think winters are so grim, long, and boring after everything I've told you. We still do plenty of activities to keep ourselves entertained,
Bartholomew says. But what? It's not like they can binge watch their favorite TV shows.
We play in the snow a lot, adults and children all together. You can see plenty of peasants ice skating on the frozen lakes. To be able to do that, we used to use pieces of polished wood or horse shin bones. But now, we have iron skates too. I need to mention though, here in Western Europe, ice skating is not as common as in Scandinavia. That is because they are more accustomed to snow and cold temperatures. Sledding is another fun activity we do. Then there are indoor games, such as chess, backgammon, and other dice games. Wool spinning and telling stories are also common ways to spend some nice time with our family. Not surprisingly, nobles have more opportunities in the entertainment area too. For example, boar hunting is very common amongst the elite.
At that moment, a portal appears at the door. Bartholomew says,
"Guess it's time for you to head back, traveler. Fare thee well."
When it's too cold outside, airplanes often get delayed, or in extreme cases, even cancelled altogether. First of all, if it snows heavily, such conditions drastically decrease visibility, making it unsafe to taxi and take off. During a blizzard, flight control may command the aircraft to stay on the ground and wait until the snowstorm subsides. Ice on the runway is another reason. An airplane's landing gear are nothing like a car's wheels, and they can't be equipped with studs to avoid skidding. But even if they were, a plane needs to develop speeds on the ground that are much higher than on an average road to take off successfully. If the runway is slippery with ice, the airplane can slide off it easily. Things like this actually happened in the past. For example, In January 2014, the JFK airport in New York was shut down after a plane skidded off the runway and into the snow. Luckily, no one was injured, but the airport staff had to dig the aircraft out of the snow, and even the local police joined the efforts. Same story with landing, which is even trickier in freezing conditions because a plane is in much less of a controlled environment and traveling at even greater speeds. What's more, while an airplane that's about to take off and skidding will probably get into an open area and stop there, one that's about to land could end up crashing into the airport's infrastructure. Needless to say, that's way more dangerous for everyone. Freezing weather conditions can also cause frost and ice sheets to build up on the plane itself. Airplanes are carefully engineered, and any tampering with their structure may cause huge trouble. As experienced pilots say, even a thin crust of ice over the wings of a plane can mess with their delicate design and destroy lift. Planes can be de-iced though. The airport staff usually spray them with a special solution that doesn't let the ice build up on the aircraft's skin. But back to the runway. If it's covered with ice, there's little you can do. Unless the sun is shining, the chances of safely removing the ice from the pavement are almost zero. There's also a chance of damaging the pavement, making potholes, which can result in safety concerns for both takeoff and landing. Imagine driving over a pothole in a car at full speed. Pretty unpleasant. And now multiply it by about 1,000, because a plane is much heavier than a car, and don't forget that the landing gear is not exactly there for driving. Jet fuel and the equipment that pumps it can freeze too if the temperature is too low. The fuel freezes at -40 degrees Fahrenheit, but that can only happen on the ground before takeoff. At a cruising altitude, temperatures may drop as low as -70 degrees Fahrenheit, but since the liquid is inside the plane and burning down steadily, it's much warmer there. On the ground though, nothing stops the fuel from turning into ice. If that happens, no flights are available, obviously. Same goes for the pumping equipment. Even if the fuel is still liquid, the pump may cover with ice and just stop delivering the fuel into the plane's tanks. In the worst case scenario, it might even break down, leading to expensive repairs and prolonged delays in flights. Finally, ground crews have to do a lot of work before takeoff or landing, and they're all human after all, so they can't bear the freezing cold for too long. This issue is often resolved by tag teaming. One group of workers goes out in the field to do the job, while the other is waiting for them in a shelter. After 20 minutes or so, the first group returns to warm up, and the second one takes up the job where the first one left it. Although it's efficient, it still slows down the operations a lot, so that might also cause delays. But despite all the trouble freezing weather can cause, it's actually more beneficial for a plane than extreme heat. Cold air is denser than hot, so planes gain more lift and stay truer while in the air. They're more easily controlled in flight too. Air molecules are slower and closer together, creating a steady flow of air around the wings and cockpit. At high altitudes, the air naturally becomes thinner as the air molecules spread out and become more scarce. That's exactly why planes can't get to the upper layers of the atmosphere. There's just not enough air there to create sufficient lift. The same happens when it's too hot down on the ground though. Air molecules get faster and spread out, meaning the plane's wings don't have as much air to push off and get into the flight mode. To take off in extreme heat, a plane has to move much faster to generate enough air resistance and lift. But to move faster, the plane needs its engines to work better, and that's also impossible when it's too hot. As the air gets thinner, the amount of oxygen decreases too. And jet engines use oxygen in the atmosphere for combustion. When they lack this crucial element, they can't convert enough energy into thrust, meaning slower acceleration and worse energy output overall. So the problem is that the plane has to have a longer runway distance to build up enough speed and lift to take off. But it can't because its engines are not working to the best of their ability. This usually doesn't cause trouble, but only up to a point. When the temperatures on the ground level reaches about 120 degrees Fahrenheit, some flights can get cancelled because it's simply dangerous for them to try and take off. Other planes are more heat resistant and powerful, but that also depends on the heat. Some aircraft even have to reduce their weight by removing part of their fuel, cargo, or even passengers when it's too hot. Lighter load means better acceleration before takeoff, and it doesn't help to avoid cancellations, but it also means planes aren't working to their full capacity. The average cruising altitude for an airplane is about 35,000 feet. They don't technically need to be so high up, but that altitude gives the best speed and efficiency. Air gets thinner at higher altitudes, which means less wind resistance, but less lift. For most commercial aircraft, the area between 30,000 and 40,000 feet is the sweet spot where the two factors balance out. You probably still aren't using a laptop from 1999, and your computer isn't flying at close to the speed of sound. Fortunately, planes have a much longer lifespan than computers. There are airliners from the early 1970s that are still just fine. They might not be able to keep up in terms of speed and fuel efficiency, but older planes are no less safe than their modern counterparts. Contrails, those white trails airplanes leave behind them at high altitudes, are easily mistaken for engine exhaust, but most are nothing more than water vapor. During a flight, moisture in the air collects in the engines before being vented with the exhaust. The hot, wet air leaving the engines mixes with the cool, dry air found at high altitudes, resulting in long, thin lines of vapor. Humidity determines when contrails form and how long they remain visible. Ever notice the numbers on the end of a runway? They're actually used to show the pilot which direction the plane is facing. For example, the number 36 is short for a heading of 360 degrees or due north. Along with numbers, the letters R and L indicate if the nearest runway is to the right or left. The lights on the tips of a plane's wings are called position lights or navigation lights, and they're used during times of reduced visibility. They help planes to see each other in the dark and can also tell pilots what direction an aircraft is traveling. The red light marks the tip of the left wing, while the green light is on the right. The third light is white and found on or near the tail. It might seem odd that the flight crew cares whether your window shades are up or down. The main reason is so that the passenger's eyes can adjust to the outside light. Mostly, it's just a matter of getting people on and off quickly. But in an emergency, the last thing they want is people stopping to blink before they evacuate the plane.
Now, who would have guessed that the most important accessory in your car might be a nail file? In case you need to get your nails done right away? Nah, to refresh your wipers. Wipers have a rubber that cleans the glass. It wipes water and particles of dirt and insects off the windshield. Over time, this rubber strip gets covered with a layer of dirt, and the wipers stop doing their thing. So all you have to do is take the wipers off and rub them with a nail file. This will remove the layer of dirt, and your wipers will last for a few more months. This is especially important during the cold season, when you need to constantly clean your car of snow. This trick will not only help you see through your windshield better and make driving safer, but it will also save you a lot of money on new wipers. Hey, you parked badly and hit your car on a pole. Well, a small dimple can be fixed with an ice cube. Just lean a piece of dry ice on the impact site and voila! The bumper looks like new. But this method is only suitable for metal parts. It's about thermal expansion. When metal gets hot, it expands, and when it cools, it tries to shrink. So, when you put ice on the dimple, there's tension inside the metal that causes it to return to its previous shape. You can also use a regular suction cup like the ones they use to transport glass. Just stick it to the dent and then pull. A regular plunger that you use to clean a clogged sink will also work for this. Now, let's try to hide the scratches at the impact site. Try picking up a regular nail polish the same color as your car. Usually, scratches on the bodywork are not deep, and they only damage the top layer of clear coat and don't even penetrate to the layer of paint itself. A fresh batch of nail polish will fill the scratch, and your car will look like new. And if you've damaged your car windshield somehow and you see little cracks forming there, use transparent nail polish. Again, the nail polish fills in the micro hollows in the crack and keeps it from getting even bigger. Now, a couple of tricks to keep your car clean at all times. Boy, I could use that. Let's start with the headlights. If you can't get the headlights clean from insects after a long drive, use a regular shaver. It can scrape off unwanted dirt that is stuck to the headlights. You can do the same with the windshield, just don't press too hard or you might scratch the glass. And to keep your headlights clean no matter what, you need to take a regular candle and white spirit and common solvent. Grade the candle and pour it into a glass. Add the solvent to the glass and heat the glass with a hairdryer. Now apply this to your headlights or even your windshield. This will create a protective wax layer that will repel dirt and water droplets. You can also apply wax to your side mirrors and they won't get covered in water when it rains. If your headlights still do get dirty, squeeze some toothpaste on a dry rag and polish your headlights. Toothpaste does a much better job than conventional cleaners. Plus, they don't get cavities. To protect your car's bodywork from dirt and rain, use hair conditioner. Mix 1 portion of the hair conditioner and 2 portions of water. Apply this mixture to the car with a microfiber cloth. It's important to do it to the car when it's as clean as possible. It's perfect timing to do this after you wash it. Then wait 5 minutes and dry the car. This protection will now repel any drops of dirt and rain. Now to the interior. You may have noticed that the windshield and rear window often fog up. This is because the water that is contained in the warm interior air comes into contact with the cold windows of the car. Water condenses, turns into droplets, and stays on the window. Now, take your regular shaving foam and put it on the windshield from the inside. A portion the size of your fist is enough for the entire windshield. Wait a few minutes and wipe the windshield with a dry cloth. The chemicals in the shaving foam will repel water droplets from your windshield so it won't fog up. You can also fight moisture in the interior of the car in the first place. To do this, take an ordinary sock and fill it with kitty litter if your cat doesn't mind. Tie the sock up and just put it in the car. Kitty litter will absorb moisture from the air in the car and your windows will stay dry. And this sock can come in handy in a tough situation. So you're stuck in a field in snowy weather. The wheels are spinning in the snow and your car is standing still. Well, just sprinkle some kitty litter out of the sock right in front of your car's driving wheels. The traction of the wheels will get better and you'll be able to get out of the snow trap. But what if your battery is low in a deserted place? There's no one to help you start the car. Well, get a jack and lift the drive wheels of your car. Make sure you're doing it safely. Now, get a tow rope. You should always have one in your car. Wrap the rope around the wheel so that when you pull it, the wheel simulates movement forward. Put the car in first gear, turn the ignition key. Now start to quickly unwind the rope so that the wheel starts to turn. Voila! The car is started. It's like starting a car by pushing it. It's important to remember that this trick only works with cars with a manual gearbox. If you don't want to spill oil when you pour it into the engine, just put a screwdriver in the hole and pour oil over it. The more advanced option is to use the oil can as a watering can. The thing is, the threads on it fit perfectly with the threads on the engine hole. So take an empty oil can and cut off the bottom. Now screw the canister into the hole and pour oil without fear of spilling it on the engine. If a door handle or lock gets frozen in the winter, use regular hand sanitizer. It'll melt the ice almost instantly. You can also soak a key in hand sanitizer and put it in the lock. You should be able to open it in a few seconds. If you don't have antiseptic, take out an ordinary straw, lean it against the lock, and blow warm air through it. A few minutes of breathing and the lock can be opened. You're charging your phone in the car, but you're tired of long wires that keep getting tangled. No need to cut them. Take your charging wire and wind it around a pencil. Now blow hot air on it with a hairdryer. Just don't overheat the wire. How about that? It now looks like a flexible spring and its length is much shorter. If you like lemonade or Coke, but don't have a can opener in your car, not a problem. Just use the tip of your seatbelt. Pop! And you can enjoy your favorite drink. If you live in the sunny states, you've often found that the steering wheel of your car sometimes gets so hot you can almost burn your hands. The easiest solution is to turn the steering wheel in the parking lot so that its bottom is up. Once back in the car, you can hold the steering wheel by the cooler top side. Also, if the car gets too hot in the parking lot, just roll down the driver's window. Get out of the car. Now open and close the rear passenger door several times. This will speed up the process of airing the interior, and you won't have to drive in an oven on wheels. When you get out of the car, you may sometimes get an electric shock. This is because of static electricity. You rub your clothes on the seat and then you touch the metal door when you try to close it. At this point, there's an electric shock between your hand and the door. To avoid this, open the door first by touching the body of the car with your hand. You can touch the passenger door from the outside. Then put your foot on the ground and get out of the car. Yay! You avoided an electric shock. If you're a novice driver, you may not have a good feel for the actual size of the car, so you might scratch it by parking it even in your own garage. Just hang a tennis ball from the ceiling so that it touches the windshield or rear window exactly when you need to hit the brakes. Perfect parking and no scratches. If you share the car with someone, you have to constantly move the driver's seat. To simplify this process, you can put little strips of colored tape on the panel under the seat and the driver's door where the seat is in a comfortable position. Now, when adjusting the seat, you just need to put these strips against each other. You can use different colors of tape for each driver. Or the other driver can get their own darn car. An expensive solution indeed. Yes, it is.
Ah yes, everyone loves a holiday. But figuring out what to pack in your luggage can be a daunting task, especially when you're limited on weight and baggage space. Not to mention, you're likely to do some holiday shopping on your adventure away from home. So, you're going to need extra space on your return for all those souvenirs you've collected. Accumulating too much weight or bulk can end up costing you a handsome fee with the airline if you're not properly prepared. But you can now relax. You just focus on booking your vacation. We'll take care of your luggage with these handy traveling tips. No doubt your clothes are going to take up the bulk of your luggage. Considering most airline standards permit 1 bag for most local trips and up to 2 bags for longer distances, that doesn't grant you a whole lot of space if you plan on being fashionable on your getaway, especially in the winter. However, this doesn't mean you have to turn your undergarments inside out for repeated use. The key here is to be clever with how you pack. Firstly, you might want to consider how you're folding your clothes. The most space-efficient method to store your wardrobe in a suitcase for travel is to roll up each item. Think of your clothes like those sleeping bags you used to take on your camping trips. They always seem too thick for their compacted covers, but with perseverance, you could roll it up tight enough to fit inside. Now, you don't need to wrestle with your clothes quite as much, but the same principle here applies. Start by folding your shirts, pants, and whatever else you plan on packing neatly, similar to how you might find them on a clothing store shelf. Then, when you have them in a relatively rectangular or squared-off shape, roll them up tightly. Now that you have your little clothes logs, start packing them into your bag. And behold, extra space! Now, here's something we've all experienced arriving at our holiday destination. We drop our suitcase on the hotel bed, open it up, only to find all our clothes unfurled and scattered like a tornado stormed through our bag. Your luggage has had a rough journey from your home to your holiday destination. It's been dragged through airport terminals, tossed around by baggage handlers, and rocked back and forth during in-flight turbulence. A simple stationary item, rubber bands, will help you keep your clothes neat. Now that you've got them rolled up, place a couple of rubber bands around them to keep them from unfurling. This is an especially neat trick if you want to roll an outfit together as one. Maybe you've got head-to-toe denim that you can't wait to rock on your getaway. Fold up your clothes as before, then layer the different items of your ideal outfit atop each other. Roll them up as one, then use the rubber bands to keep them together. You can preemptively decide your day-to-day outfits before you even board the plane. However, you may still prefer to fold your clothes, especially business or formal shirts and pants. Lucky for you, we have a handy trick for that too. Instead of folding each item individually, we're going to lay it out all on top of each other. Start with your shirts and tops, alternating with one on top and one on the bottom, keeping the necks of your shirts at the center. Work your way down to your pants and smaller items until they're all laid out flat. Try to keep your pants in the middle. Finally, start folding your items in on themselves, with the shirts creating the outer layer until you end up with a neat bundle, like a present. You should be able to sit your bundle squarely into your bag. Want to save even more luggage space? Instead of putting your undergarments and socks into their own section, try fitting them into available spaces and gaps within the rest of your luggage. If you plan on taking a cap with you, for instance, the inside of your headwear is a great space to store your socks. This applies to other small luggage items too, such as phone chargers and ties. Though keep in mind that you can also lay your ties and belts out flat across the clothes in your luggage to conserve space. And if you're really limited on baggage size, say all you have is a carry-on for a fortnight-long trip, here's another method. Get yourself some compression bags to store your clothes in. These bags will compact multiple sets of clothes into the size of a small laptop bag. Fold up the clothes you intend to pack and store them into the compression bag. You should be able to fit 8 to 10 standard clothes items or a few bulky ones. Once you've filled the bag, seal it and squeeze the air out through the built-in one-way pressure valve. The easiest way to do this is either by rolling it, and you should be pretty good at rolling your clothes by now, or by using your knees to apply pressure. You should be able to fit 2 to 4 of these compression bags in your standard carry-on suitcase, which is especially helpful if you want to save money by avoiding checked-in luggage. And you can take even more clothes on board with you if you stick them into a pillowcase. The best thing about this tip is that it also doubles as a comfy pillow for you to rest your head on during the flight. If you do have a bit more space to spare, another great way to keep your stuff organized is with packing cubes. It might not be as space efficient as compression bags, but a lot of travelers prefer them for tidier and well-organized packing. You might like to divide them by outfits or clothes types, such as one for pants and one for tops. You can easily purchase packing cubes from most online retail services and travel and camping stores. There are also packing cubes specially designed for one or more pairs of shoes. This is a great way to compact the space your shoes would otherwise take up in your luggage, and to keep your clean clothes from coming into contact with your footwear. Nobody wants their tops to smell like feet, right? If you're still struggling to bring all your items with you inside your suitcase, there are a couple more tricks that you can use for that extra bit of weight without the extra cost. The most obvious of which is to use your own body. That's right, time to layer up. Pick out all your bulky items and wear as many as you can manage. You can try wearing some shorts under your pants or several layers of your winter wear, such as your sweater, jacket, and coat, all over the top of one another. You might be sweating a little, but most airports and planes are well air-conditioned. You can always shed some layers once you've boarded your flight. At least you'll have some warm wear to snuggle up in if you do get cold up there in the clouds. If you don't want to wear all those layers, there's actually another type of bag you can carry on the plane with you, free of charge. Get yourself a duty-free bag from any of the duty-free stores in the airport. You can even hang on to it for next time. Store all your extra items in your duty-free bag and carry it onto your flight at no additional cost. It's also worth considering what type of luggage you're using. More importantly, how much it weighs. A lot of people forget that the standard 15 pounds permitted by most airlines includes the actual weight of their suitcase. The bag itself can often weigh up to 4 to 6 pounds. That's a huge chunk of your weight in the bag alone. So, when you're shopping for your luggage, take into account how much it weighs. Choosing a lighter bag will give you more space for the items you want to take with you. Stick to some of these handy tips and you'll be on your way with no shortage of luggage and some extra money to spend on your vacation. Happy flying!
Imagine leaving cookies and milk out for Santa. And he does actually show up, but with a furry companion that is not a reindeer. According to folklore, Krampus is a big, scary creature with horns and hooves, and he goes out looking for children who've been bad. The name Krampus might derive from the word krampen, which means rotten, or cramp, which means claw. Nobody's completely sure where Krampus came from, but some people think he's been around since before people started celebrating Christmas. Some say that people have been celebrating Krampus since the 6th or 7th century, which is a super long time ago. But there are no writings about Krampus before the 16th century, so solid details about him are still a mystery. There are also theories that suggest Krampus is the son of the ruler of the underworld. Krampus is like the total opposite of Santa Claus. He is this scary mythical creature who looks a lot like half goat and half demon. He has fur all over and sharp teeth. Krampus carries chains, which are believed to symbolize how people once tried to keep bad spirits under control. He likes to shake those chains for a bit of drama. And sometimes, these chains have bells of different sizes jingling along. He also brings bundles of birch branches, and he uses them to punish naughty kids. Some folks think these birch branches might have had a special meaning in ancient pagan rituals. If you like to explore such stories, like, share, and subscribe to How About. In some versions, the birch branches are replaced with a whip. Krampus was said to be sometimes seen with a sack or a basket strapped to his back. And that was not for carrying toys or gifts, that was for hauling away bad children. Some say he might take them away for further punishment, or even on a one-way trip to the underworld. Krampus goes by different names in different places, like Black Peter and Klaubauf, to name some. In parts of Europe, people celebrate St. Nicholas Day on December 6th. The night before St. Nicholas Day is what they call Krampus Night. During this time, Krampus performs his spooky tricks to frighten naughty kids. Sometimes he is with St. Nicholas, and sometimes he's on his own. St. Nicholas usually looks like a bishop in fancy clothes, carrying a golden staff. He is all about good kids, but Krampus is in charge of naughty ones. St. Nicholas hands out gifts, while Krampus gives out coal and birch branches. There is also a tradition to offer Krampus a special strong drink made just for him. In 1923, the Krampus tradition was banned by the Austrian government of the time. In the 1950s, the government gave out pamphlets with titles like Krampus is an evil man. But as the 20th century was wrapping up, some people started to get interested in Krampus all over again. They wanted to bring the tradition back, and they did it. It's still going strong today. In places like Bavaria, people are still making their own hand-carved wooden masks to keep the Krampus spirit alive. During Krampus celebrations, people dress up in all sorts of costumes. These characters include Krampus, St. Nicholas, a woodsman, angels, and an old woman. Krampus's costume usually has elements like a furry suit, horns, a demon mask, and hooves. He might have also had props like bells, birch branches, a basket on his back, chains, and a walking staff. Traditional Krampus costumes were made from not so animal-friendly materials, but these days they're often made out of cheaper materials, like fake fur and latex. Every year, as Christmas approaches, there's a pretty unique tradition that happens in the alpine villages of Austria. It's a tradition that's been around for over 1,500 years, and it still gets everyone excited, especially in the Austrian region of Tyrol. Families gather to watch the Krampus parade. In this parade, young guys dress up in fur suits and wooden masks and attach cowbells to themselves. They even ride on chariots with fire. During these festivities, you'll spot Krampus figures and their gang of elves mingling with the crowd. They're on the lookout for innocent bystanders, often older kids and adults. These red-eyed costume folks carry prickly brooms and birch branches. When they spot a target, they chase their victims until they give in. They might even shake chains and whip their birch branches around to make the spectators a little jittery. Most of the people from Tyrol think this tradition is good fun. They're often found munching on roasted chestnuts while enjoying the whole thing. Traditionally, children leave their shoes out and wait. If they've been nice, they find treats in their shoes. But if they've been bad, they might find a birch rod, which is not a fun surprise. Nowadays, Krampus isn't actually dragging kids to the underworld, but he still likes to play some pranks. In Styria, there's a tradition where Krampus gives families birch bundles. People paint these twigs gold and display them in their homes all year long. They serve as a reminder to kids that Krampus is watching, even if they temporarily forget about him. In smaller, more isolated villages, Krampus has other scary companions, like a wild man with antlers. At the same time, there are some cities in Austria where a tamer, friendlier version of Krampus can be seen. He is more like a funny figure than someone scary. In an Italian town, They have an annual Krampus festival in early December. At dusk, the Krampus comes out of an old cave and chases kids, even adults sometimes. He gives them a nudge on the legs to remind them to behave. To calm Krampus down, children and young people have to recite a prayer. There are similar figures in nearby areas. In many parts of Croatia, Krampus is pictured as a demon wearing a cloth sack around his waist, along with chains around his neck, ankles, and wrists. As part of the tradition, when a child gets a gift from St. Nicholas, they also get a golden branch to show their good deeds for the year. But if the kid has been naughty, Krampus takes the gifts and leaves a silver branch instead to remind them of their not-so-great behavior. Krampus can also thank the hype for buying stuff in the 1800s for his growing popularity. Around that time, people were all about trying new things, so manufacturers saw an opportunity to make money off Krampus. It started when the Austrian authorities let go of the control over postcard production. This allowed businesses to produce a variety of Krampus-themed postcards, and they really took off. When mass media like postcards became a big thing in Germany and Austria in the 1890s, Krampus got caught up in the craze. They started making special holiday cards called Krampuskarten. But these cards weren't about spreading warm and fuzzy feelings. The ones that said greetings from Krampus were quite different. Many of these postcards showed Krampus going after children, leading them away or carrying them off in his bag. Not the kinds of cards you would send to your grandma. Some postcards meant for grown-ups showed Krampus as a woman and sometimes with women. Until 2004, most people in the United States probably had no clue about Krampus or those Krampus cards. But then, one art director named Monty Beauchamp put together a book filled with Krampus cards and also set up an art show based on them. It's hard to say if Monty is the main reason why Krampus became a thing in the United States, but ever since, Krampus has become sort of a funny, ironic figure in America. And the real kicker occurred in 2015, when they came out with a big Krampus movie. Not a low-budget one, but a proper comedy horror film called Krampus, starring Adam Scott and Toni Collette. So even though Krampus is pretty new to America, this alpine legend is like the original Bad Santa who's been around for generations. Christmas time is here. You finally found a nice tree, brought it into your home, and now you're ready to decorate. But first off, you should unclog your toilet because something smells really bad in your place. Oh, wait, could that be your new tree? Possibly. And there can be a couple of reasons for that. First, when you bring the tree home, it's cut down but still alive. That means it will try to seal the cut in its trunk with resin to heal itself. So if you just put it in the water, the tree won't absorb any. You'll end up with stagnant water in the bucket, and it won't take too long before it starts to stink. So, when you first bring your new Christmas tree in, take a sharp knife and refresh the cut so the tree can start drinking the water. Or you might have brought it too early. A Christmas tree enters the final stage of its life when you bring it indoors. When a tree has withered, it stops absorbing water. So, to keep it fresh for a longer time, it would be better to store it somewhere in a cold place, like a garage, or maybe even your garden for a while before you bring it inside. This way, your tree will get about 2 extra weeks before it starts to dry out. You can do your best, but there's always an option that you have picked the tree that wasn't fresh from the beginning. Not every vendor sells Christmas trees that are recently cut. Sometimes, they leave them in a warehouse for a few weeks before taking them out on sale. Here's a tip to notice the difference. When choosing your tree, run your hand through a branch. If you see needles come off, keep looking for a fresher one. But if you did buy a tree that's not that fresh, you can still perk it up. Put some fresh water in the stand and add an aspirin in there. Or you can try to mix some sugar, aspirin, and a little bit of lemon juice to get a couple of extra days of a good-looking tree that smells well. Sometimes, trees smell bad not naturally. It's done on purpose. Lincoln, Nebraska had a problem with people who kept stealing Christmas trees. To stop them, they had to add a liquid called fox urine. You can get that in a store that sells trapping supplies. They sprayed this liquid on their trees and left signs that claimed that the smell was really bad, especially if you brought the trees indoors. And to make the stench even stronger, they added a pinch of skunk smell. That combination was awful enough to keep the thieves away. On the campus of the University of Minnesota, people would either take whole Christmas trees or they would cut off the tops of those big evergreen ones. To stop this, the team in charge of taking care of the land of the university started spraying the trees with a strong, bad-smelling liquid that skunks use as a defense mechanism. And it worked. Ever since 2012, no trees have disappeared from the campus. In Port Republic in New Jersey, people also had to use a stinky mixture to protect their Christmas trees from being stolen. This time, if you brought the tree inside a warm house, you'd sense something similar to the smell of rotten eggs. One homeowner from Lancaster County, Nebraska, didn't feel like applying the smell. So he just left a few warning signs that his tree was sprayed with something disgusting. It worked for a couple of years, until he decided not to put up the sign since the tree had grown too tall, so he thought it was safe. But that was the year when thieves took it. Minnesota also had a problem with people stealing Christmas trees. Their Department of Natural Resources watched a property in a forested area for 2 nights because they had wanted to catch a young couple who kept stealing spruce trees from the land that was in the ownership of the state. That couple was kinda like a modern version of Bonnie and Clyde. They had illegally cut down almost 2,000 trees. They wanted to sell them, but eventually they ended up arrested. Of course, Christmas is not only about smelly or non-smelly trees. Different countries have their own ways of celebrating this holiday. For example, in Austria, there's a character called Krampus, who scares kids who haven't been good and leaves them sticks. In Catalonia, a region in northeastern Spain, they have a nativity scene with their own funny figurines. They also have a pretty unique tradition called Dia de Nadal. It's a log with a red hat and a face drawn on it. They treat it as a Christmas character. They feed the log bits of food and then hit it with a stick while singing a special song. The log is then supposed to poop out presents, which are often pieces of nougat candy. In Sweden, Christmas is not Christmas without Donald Duck. About 40% of Swedish people gather around their TVs on Christmas Eve to watch this popular cartoon. Ever since 1959, their main TV channel has been showing a special program called Donald Duck and His Friends Wish You a Merry Christmas. Back in the day, Sweden had only 2 TV channels, so this was the only time they could actually watch American and Disney cartoons. The tradition became so popular among people that many, during this program, used their phones less. There were even fewer emergency calls at that time. It's a tradition they really value, not something you can perhaps record and watch later. People are so into the show that they watch it in silence unless there's a funny scene when they laugh or when they want to share their favorite lines. Here's something that will warm your heart. J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, wrote letters to his kids every year where he presented as Father Christmas. These letters started off as simple Happy Christmas cards, but as time went by, they turned into more complex stories. After a while, he even started talking about goblins, a polar bear sidekick, the man on the moon, snow elves, and many other magical things. He even developed a special Arctic language. People in Iceland have a beautiful cozy tradition, which in translation from their language means Christmas book flood. It started back in the 1940s when paper was in short supply, so many would exchange books as presents. This tradition has remained, which is why Icelanders, even today, love giving and receiving books for this time of year. Sometime around mid-November, every household gets a book catalog they can use to order gifts for their family and friends just in time. The main day for exchanging presents is Christmas Eve. They open gifts and later enjoy hot chocolate and reading their new books. Not all countries have a custom of opening Christmas gifts together on the same day. Some are shocked to hear that in certain countries, families open their presents on December 24th. Hollywood movies often show families who put out Christmas and milk for Santa, who comes to visit on Christmas Eve. And the following day, they wake up and start ripping the paper off their presents. Sometimes in the movies, you can see people who exchange a single gift on Christmas Eve. The presents are usually festive pajamas, which they wear and sleep in on December 24th. This way, they kinda prepare for all the joys, excitement, and opening presents the next day. Japan has its own unique tradition. Instead of preparing a homemade meal for Christmas Day, they eat fried chicken from KFC. It's so popular that people have to make their KFC orders weeks in advance to make sure they'll get their food. The Kentucky for Christmas slogan started as a part of a marketing campaign back in 1974, and now, decades later, about 3.6 million Japanese people enjoy their fried chicken for Christmas. People in Norway pay only half their tax in November, so everyone has more money for Christmas. That way, a month before Christmas is the time when Norwegian employees really make the most of their working hours. They might even put in a bit of overtime.
Christmas, the season of lights, also has a dark side. Legend has it that Christmas Eve is a time for spirits to stroll the earth. Today, we'll look at scary monsters, mysterious entities, and more. The Yule lads, hailing from Iceland, make for quite a Christmas tradition. In contrast to the charming 7 dwarfs of Snow White, these 13 gnome-like trolls bring a touch of quirkiness to the holiday season. The Yule lads first made their literary debut in a 17th century poem. These playful youngsters, each with their own unique names and abilities, sprinkle a touch of mischief in the 13 days leading up to the grand Christmas celebration. Their cozy home is nestled in a mountain cave, where they reside with their interesting parents. The clan's father is a leisure master and prefers to hang out in the cave. Their mother is a giantess with an unusual craving for adventure. She seeks out mischievous children to join her in preparing a stew. Out of the troll kids, Spoonlicker, for instance, is known for his habit of thoroughly cleaning utensils with his tongue. Meanwhile, Door Slammer engages in door-slamming antics that might remind you of an angry teenager. As for Sausage Swiper, well, the clue is in the name. And let's not forget about the family's feline friend, who is also known as Yule. This furry companion is a giant black cat. It's on the lookout for folks. If it spots children without brand new clothes, the encounter won't end so well for the kids. Wow, that's harsh. The Nisi is a kind of creature that would send shivers down your spine. It's a diminutive bearded figure donning a sinister red cone-shaped hat. These malevolent beings enjoy lingering around farms. Their presence is unsettling as they claim to offer assistance with daily chores. But beware, for their demands are far from ordinary. In exchange for their eerie aid, they want a dread-inducing offering. Should you dare to deny this sinister request, they will unleash a reign of pure evil upon your existence. There's a nightmarish saga known as When the Nisi Got No Butter on His Christmas Porridge. Yeah, that's a real title. This tale revolves around a young girl who dares to tamper with Nisi's feast. She places the butter beneath the porridge, invoking his wrath. The horrifying consequences? He takes care of the farm's prized cow using his powers. Takes care, In Scandinavian folklore, many people know this creature as Tomten, too. Mary Lloyd is here to make you run for your life. It's New Year's Eve, and you're a young whelp. Suddenly, you hear some mysterious knocking at your door. As you swing it open, you're met with a spine-tingling sight. It's a tall, creepy figure wearing a long, flowing cloak with a horse's skull on its head. It's accompanied by a group of people who are chanting something in an eerie way. To make it even more unsettling, the horse skull has fake eyeballs in its eye holes, and its mouth is slightly open. This whole scene scares you so much that you can't even move. Not the vision of sugar plums you'd rather have. And then we have the karakonkolos, hailing from the lands of Turkey and Bulgaria. Now picture a more sinister version of the elusive Bigfoot. The karakonkolos lurks on street corners, posing riddles to passers-by. Answer correctly, and you may escape unharmed. But should you fail, you risk being plunged into a frigid slumber, even colder than the wintry night. In other corners of the world, the karakonkolos revel in trickery, often masquerading as a familiar voice, tricking unsuspecting victims into venturing out into the snow. This eerie boogeyman is said to have originated from the Greek kalakanzaros, its sinister influence echoing across the land. So, the Kalakanzari in Greece are a breed of goblins. For most of the year, they dwell underground, secretly plotting to bring about the apocalypse. However, when Advent arrives, they emerge into the human domain with sinister intent, sowing mischief and malevolence. These creatures are often described as dark, furry entities adorned with tusks and horns. They're male and curiously well endowed in their grotesque forms. Meet Frau Perkta, a character who comes from Germany and Austria. Now, she may go by different names, like Italian La Befana or Russian Babushka, but her modus operandi remains consistent. During the 12 delightful days of Christmas, she shifts between being a sweet, beautiful alpine goddess and a mischievous, some say mischievous, wrinkled hag, depending on your contact with her. She's quite the mood ring. If you've pleased her, you might just see a youthful presence. But if you get on her bad side, she's been known to perform a bit of DIY surgery. Frau Perkta is a remnant from Alpine paganism in the early Middle Ages. It's strongly associated with Berchtentag, also known as the Fest of the Epiphany, which happens on the 12th night after Christmas, on January 6th. As for her name, Perkta means bright one, a fitting moniker. Her look is complete with a knife concealed under her skirt. Careful sitting down. The next one is Krampus. His name is rooted in the German term Krampen, which means claw. It's a creature hailing from the eastern alpine corners of Europe. Legend has it that Krampus takes it upon himself to playfully remind naughty children of the importance of good behavior on the evening of December 5. His methods are imaginative and way above having a chat with little humans. Meanwhile, his kind-hearted partner in holiday cheer, St. Nicholas, rewards well-behaved youngsters the next day during the joyful Feast of St. Nicholas. These traditions trace their roots as far back as the 6th century. Today, many European towns enthusiastically host Krampuslauf, or Krampus runs. People dress up as him at festivals. And for those with a penchant for sending unique holiday greetings, there's the holiday cards option. In an Alsatian legend, there's a story of Hans Trapp. No, not the Von Trapp family. Hans is a local figure known for his extreme greed and lack of moral principles. He resorted to practicing witchcraft and making pacts with evil forces in pursuit of wealth. He faced a dramatic downfall. He lost both his wealth and his place in society. To evade detection, he adopted the guise of a scarecrow and wandered the countryside. At a certain point, he became fixated on the idea of experiencing the taste of human flesh. Oh boy. God recognized that matters had spiraled out of control and struck Hans Trapp with a bolt of lightning. He met his end, yet there are accounts of his spectral return on Christmas. Belsnickel is a character of German folklore. It's traditionally known for its unique role in guiding children toward better behavior, offering an intriguing contrast to the jolly figure of St. Nicholas. The term Belsnickel can be traced back to the fusion of Bells, an older German term signifying fur, and nickel as a nod to St. Nicholas. Belsnickel is known for his visits to children, during which he engages them in friendly conversations and playful inquiries. Based on their responses, he may opt to reward them with a gift or employ a form of discipline, often involving a wooden rod. Belsnickel's origins can be traced back to the Middle Ages. The final touch is Grilla. She is a giantess who is able to sense children misbehaving all year round. She keeps a record of those children and sees them as snacks during Christmas time. Wait a minute, didn't we mention her before? If you ask this question, you're an attentive, devoted Brightsider. We have indeed mentioned her, the mother of the Yule lads. Remember that crowded family with a black cat? Now, Pierre Fouettard was a butcher. He was known for his involvement in the cases of abduction and robbery, leading to tragic fates for children. St. Nicholas uncovered his gruesome acts and miraculously revived the children. In retribution, Pierre Fouettard was sentenced to a lifetime of servitude, accompanying St. Nicholas and managing wayward youngsters. Well, thanks anyways, but I think I'll just stick with Santa Claus. Oh, and the reindeer.
letters SSSS on your boarding pass are reason to worry? What's much more dangerous than turbulence? Should you really be the first to board the plane? You're about to figure it out. You might have noticed that most planes have blue seats. There's no mystery here. Airlines opt for this color because it's considered to have a calming effect. This color supposedly puts passengers at ease and helps even the most nervous flyers to relax. But there's also another, more practical reason. Stains, dirt, and scrapes are less visible on dark blue fabric. Never throw your boarding pass away in a public place. It contains tons of your sensitive information, including your name and frequent flyer number. This, in turn, may allow someone else to check your future bookings, change your seat, or even cancel your flights. So the best way to deal with the boarding pass for a flight you've already boarded is to take it home and feed it through a paper shredder. By the way, if you ever see the letters SSSS or S on your boarding pass, get ready for additional security checks. Instead of these letters, there may be a checkerboard pattern. Anyway, if you have any of these marks, your carry-on luggage can also undergo a thorough inspection. Why might they choose you for secondary screening? Some of the criteria are making a one-way reservation or paying cash for your ticket. In some cases, the selection is absolutely random. Look, your gate is open and the boarding is started. Wait, where are you running? There's no need to hurry. The trick experienced globetrotters use is always board last. For one thing, you don't have to waste time standing in line. Then, there are fewer people on the jetway and in the aisle, and you spend less time on the plane. No one is going to take your seat anyway. There's one exception though. If you have a bulky carry-on bag, it may make more sense not to board last. Otherwise, the chances are high that all the overhead bin space will be occupied by the time you reach your seat. And then your bag may end up in another part of the plane, and you'll have to wait till the other passengers disembark before you get to your luggage. Duh! Before takeoff and landing, flight attendants usually flip a small switch on the bathroom door. This prevents it from flying open when it's not supposed to. With the same ease, a flight attendant can open the door when someone is inside. Look, they only need to lift the lavatory sign and move the knob into the unlocked position. Pilots don't worry about turbulence. That's because they know that there is a thing way more dangerous than any turbulence. It's an updraft. In most cases, turbulence only drops you a couple of feet down, even though it might feel as if you're falling from the top of the Empire State Building. If the turbulence is strong enough for the pilots to ask flight attendants to sit down, the plane can go 10 to 20 feet down. The most extreme white-knuckle turbulence is super rare. But an updraft is a big air mass, part of a storm or some other weather phenomenon, moving upwards. Pilots don't see updrafts on their radars at night, and when a plane hits one, it feels like driving over a huge speed bump at 500 miles per hour. An updraft is also extremely treacherous because it can push an aircraft upward to dangerous altitudes. Modern planes have a special system that detects other aircraft, mountains, and different solid objects in their path. 10 miles away from another plane, and a voice in the cockpit starts chanting, "Traffic, traffic." 5 miles closer, and the same voice begins to give pilots the directions. Airplanes can operate with one engine, even during takeoff and landing. Both engines failing simultaneously is almost unheard of. But even then, a plane wouldn't drop from the sky like a rock. Pilots would have up to 20 minutes to find a suitable place to land. The way the cabin is pressurized has a great effect on your taste buds. You lose up to 30% of your ability to taste sweet and salty things. In other words, it's not that airplane food isn't tasty, you just don't feel its flavor. That's also the main reason why airline catering companies add extra salt and spices to the dishes they cook. But you know what may help you? Noise-canceling earphones. For some reason, that probably has a scientific explanation. Cutting off all that noise around can help your taste buds. Each of those dings you hear during the flight has its own meaning. In most airlines, a boing soon after takeoff indicates that the landing gear is getting retracted. 3 dings in a row means more urgency than just one. A high-low ringtone informs crew members that their colleague needs them in another part of the plane. 3 low chimes means some serious turbulence ahead. Crew members are supposed to put away meal carts, take their seats, and fasten their seatbelts. If you're a nervous flyer, pick a seat in the middle of the cabin. Turbulence mostly affects the front and rear parts of the cabin. The middle section, which is over the wings, doesn't shake so much. Pilots and co-pilots eat different meals. The reason for this precaution is very simple. Imagine both pilots having the same dish and getting food poisoning. In this case, neither of them will be able to control the plane. If they still want to have the same dish and won't agree to have anything else, there's a safety net. Pilots don't have their meals at the same time. If one pilot ate the dish and still feels okay several hours later, the other pilot can brave their meal as well. What would you say when asked about the filthiest place on a plane? Nope, that's not the toilet seat. It's not even in the bathroom. Flight attendants warn that you should be particularly careful with headrests, seat pockets, tray tables, and seat belts. Experiments have shown that 1/3 of all seat belts have yeast and mold on them. Most tray tables are covered with bacteria. Seat pockets are extremely filthy too, but headrests are the dirtiest of them all. In most cases, flight attendants don't have enough time to change or disinfect them in between flights. If your captain announces they're finishing some paperwork, it means they're busy revising the flight itinerary or waiting for the ground staff to prepare the flight logbook. That's a journal that contains the official record of a journey. Some places, especially those flying long distances, have secret bedrooms for crew members to catch some shut-eye. These bedrooms, called crew rest compartments, are located either at the back of the plane or behind the cockpit. Such a compartment can have up to 10 comfortable beds where flight attendants can have a rest. Plane windows are made of super strong plexiglass that can easily cope with high speeds. And the window panes are shaped in a special way so that the high pressure inside the cabin pushes them against the aircraft body. In other words, plane windows are very unlikely to get broken. Once upon a time, plane windows were square, but the pressure built up in the corners of such windows, making them ultimate weak spots. This means that each square window had 4 weak spots. This made them likely to crash under the enormous stress of high altitudes. Luckily, making airplane windows curved solved this problem once and forever. Such a shape distributes the pressure and reduces the likelihood of cracks or any other damage. Planes regularly get struck by lightning, at least once a year or once per 1,000 hours of flight time. These days, it's totally safe. The electric charge simply runs through the aircraft's aluminum shell. It doesn't cause the plane any damage. But did you know that airplanes not only get hit by lightning, but they also trigger it? When an aircraft is flying through a cloud, the friction between its fuselage and the air creates static electricity. Sometimes it can cause lightning.
A colossal iceberg, more giant than a city, broke away from Antarctica in mid-2021. It's so big that it's 40 times bigger than Paris and 73 times the size of Manhattan. Imagine that you come out of your small holiday shack on the coast of South Africa, near the town of Port Elizabeth. You have a cup of tea in your hand as you've just woken up. You stand near the edge of your lookout, the vast Indian Ocean before you. Something catches your eye. To the right, there is something so monumental, you can't comprehend it. It's a giant slab of ice, 300 feet high, and stretching away many miles, as far as the eye can see. It rolls slowly, but relentlessly on, heading out into the deep sea. If it goes far enough, it could reach the western coast of Australia. Playing in front of it are a pod of dolphins, like they sometimes do off the bow of a ship. Yet they're just specks compared to the mammoth size. You're so shocked that you drop your cup. Your eyes are as big as saucers. It's like something out of a science fiction movie. Are you dreaming? Are you seeing things? Nope. It's A76. It's real, and it's currently on the move. What could happen to it is anyone's guess. Well, scientists have a few theories, but let's get a grasp of its size first. The iceberg is 110 miles long and 16 miles wide. It's basically the shape of a gigantic finger. If you were standing at the coast of Dover, looking across the English Channel toward France, the iceberg would be almost as wide. The channel is 21 miles across at its narrowest. That means approximately 2/3 of that distance would be filled with the iceberg. That's if it were drifting finger pointing down, so to speak. If it were facing the other way, it could still enter the English Channel, but as it got closer to the narrowest points, it would smash into the coasts of both England and France. It would go up over land. It would slide over the green fields of England, the white ice bold against the rich green. It would cruise past the vineyards of France. It was temporarily lowering the temperature of everything around it. Those grapes would be like jelly crystals. It would skim right over highways, cars stopping to observe this colossal thing, like a visitor from another galaxy. You could pluck chunks off it for your drink as it sailed past. Failing that, you could scale it and go ice climbing, right on the outskirts of London. It would certainly be handy in the summer. But let's get back to what actually happened, and what scientists think will happen to it. As of the beginning of 2022, A76 is the world's most giant floating iceberg. It was calved from the Filchner Ronne ice shelf in Antarctica in the middle of May 2021. Ice calving, also known as glacier calving, is the breaking up of ice chunks from the edge of a glacier. It then pulls away from the ice mass into a separate entity. If you were nearby, you would hear a lot of cracking and a massive booming sound. Blocks of ice up to 200 feet would break free and crash into the water. It would cause huge waves. Not even adventurous surfers would want to tackle those breakers. Ice calving is a natural event. The area where A76 broke off has seen little change in recent decades. There have been even larger chunks of ice than A76, but this one is currently the largest in the world. Scientists at the British Antarctic Survey spotted it. There are satellite images of it breaking free, as captured by the European Space Agency's Sentinel-1A satellite. The size at the calving was an estimated 1,670 square miles. Right now, it's in the Weddell Sea around Antarctica. The Weddell Sea is part of the Southern Ocean. It was named after the Scottish sailor James Weddell, who entered the area in 1823. Scientists have deemed the Weddell Sea to have the clearest water of any sea. Imagine peering down into its depths from a boat. What a fantastic view it must be. The area is full of whales and seals. As you look down, you may see killer whales, humpback whales, minke whales, leopard seals, and crab-eater seals. And if you look towards land, you'll likely see a colony of Adelie penguins. They're the dominant penguin species in this area because they adapt to the harsh environment. In fact, this is the only location in the world they live. What an incredible array of wildlife to observe, all from the comfort of the ship's deck, while you drink another cup of hot tea. It gets pretty cold in these parts. To get an idea of what could happen to A76, scientists refer to other data, such as the even more enormous iceberg called A68. It was calved from the ice shelf known as Larsen C off Antarctica in 2017. While it may be exciting, though a little daunting, to think of it also sailing up the English Channel, A68 floated out to warmer seas and, by early 2021, had all but dissipated. That was a relatively quick demise. Some icebergs have been observed floating around for up to 18 years. Suppose they remain in the relatively cold waters. It all depends on where A76 decides to go. Satellites have helped scientists keep track of these monstrous movements, whereas they would go unnoticed in the past. That's how they know that by day 148, this iceberg had split into 3 fragments, imaginatively titled A76A, A76B, and A76C. The numbers might be boring, but they're based on the Antarctic quadrant in which they were first sighted. If these enormous chunks do break up entirely, it will not add to rising sea levels because it was already part of the floating ice shelf. Imagine these ice chunks in your glass. They already take up a certain amount of space. They will simply change form into water. Icebergs like this one are different from glaciers or ice sheets found on land. Those are the things that help to raise sea levels when they break off and melt. For example, if the whole of Antarctica's ice sheet were to melt, it could raise sea levels by nearly 190 feet. If you think A76 is enormous, and it clearly is, there was another that makes it look small in comparison. On record, the largest iceberg was sighted in November of 1956, 150 miles west of Scott Island in the South Pacific Ocean. Ironically, it was seen by a ship known as the USS Glacier. It was sized over 12,000 square miles. This iceberg was larger than the country of Belgium. What may happen to the chunks of A76 will depend on a few factors. Ocean currents can make a significant impact, and wind direction and speed can too. They may move closer to coastlines, where they can freeze into pack ice. They can also drift into shallow waters and hit the seabed, called seabed gouging. The deepest part of the iceberg can act like the keel of a boat. It digs into the ocean floor, but the sheer size of the iceberg keeps it moving. Soon it's tearing up the floor, creating a long, narrow furrow or a gouge. Fish would scatter, the earth would shake, the noise would be tremendous. It's actually quite common in offshore environments near where ice is found. You would not want to be scuba diving nearby when one of these rips through. However, it would make for a spectacular sight. Generally, icebergs deteriorate through melting and fracturing, which, as you can imagine, changes the mass and the surface area. Combined with wind and ocean currents, it can make iceberg modeling difficult. As for A76, we'll just have to wait and see. Before we go, let's return to our imaginary voyage down the English Channel. The island of ice, 73 times the size of Manhattan, with its gigantic frosty finger pointed down toward the Celtic Sea, rolling steadily onwards, unable to be stopped. Hundreds of thousands of people have flocked to the coasts of both England and France to watch this extraordinary spectacle as it cruises by. On top of the ice, there are thousands of penguins playing happily. They almost look to be waving back to the abundance of sightseers who cheer them on their way, the children jumping with joy at the most spectacular sight they've ever witnessed.
There are almost 200 countries in the world, and each has a bunch of laws that citizens should follow. Some of them might be pretty strange sometimes. For example, in some places in Greece, it's prohibited to wear heels. Meanwhile, in Samoa, it's illegal to forget your wife's birthday. But what if I told you there's a place on Earth with absolutely no laws, and it's not a country, but an entire continent? Welcome to Antarctica. At least that's what I'll tell you if you manage to scrape together your savings and shell out at least $8 grand to travel to the South Pole. Technically speaking, there are no laws here, just like I mentioned before. Since it isn't a country, it can't have any laws. The situation there isn't too different from being out in international waters. If there were laws governing Antarctica, that would imply it's a sovereign territory ruled by some government or governments. Sorry to burst the bubble for all the power-hungry folks, but this continent isn't up for grabs. 7 countries, namely Great Britain, New Zealand, France, Chile, Norway, Australia, and Argentina, have territorial claims on it. And there are actually people living there right now. So, how do things get done in Antarctica? Its status is like a no man's land, and world powers plan to keep it that way. In reality, the international scientific community governs Antarctica, since they're the ones working and operating on the continent. However, this cooperation likely wouldn't have been possible without the Antarctic Treaty of 1959, which laid the groundwork for how everything functions today. To be honest, this treaty isn't something that can pique your interest. It basically states that Antarctica should remain neutral and includes some basic information about its territorial status. That's all. There's really nothing useful for the average traveler like you and me. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Before going somewhere, it's cool to know specific things about your destination. Like that in Singapore, chewing gum can get you in serious trouble. Or that in Tajikistan, grown men aren't really advised to wear shorts in public. So imagine you found that money, bought the heaviest jacket you could find, and finally ventured into this land. What do you need to know? And what should you absolutely avoid doing there? It all starts with how you pack your bags. One big tip for anyone visiting this continent is to adhere to the "don't pack a pest" rule. You must follow strict procedures to avoid introducing non-native species into the environment. Most of these non-natives are plant species, around 121, including fungi. But some folks have managed to introduce 72 invertebrates, 8 mammals, and 3 bird species. There are even worms in Antarctica now. Actually, every time a new species comes to Antarctica, it has all the chances to become an invasive species in case they survive the frigid temperatures. Invasive species often flourish in new environments because they lack natural predators. Take the brown tree snake, for example. These snakes were accidentally brought to Guam in the late 40s or early 50s. With no local predators and plenty of birds and rodents to munch on, their numbers skyrocketed. They even caused the extinction of 9 out of 11 forest bird species on the island. It's clear that the negative reputation of invasive species is well-deserved for both animals and plants. So, to ensure the list of plants in Antarctica doesn't grow, there are strict hygiene rules in place. Everything you bring must be washed, decontaminated, and inspected daily. For example, all the Velcros you've got, they're prime hiding spots for plants, and they'll even give you a quick vacuum just to make sure you're not sneaking in any seeds. Once you're there, be prepared for things to get a bit dirty. You can't take an actual shower in Antarctica. It doesn't matter if you're visiting for 1 day or 50. You just can't do it. There's no running water, so say hello to wet wipes and bid farewell to flushing toilets too. All in all, going number 2 isn't the best experience. Imagine you lower your pants while bundled up in a few down jackets and settle onto a bucket. No ceramic throne for you here. Enjoy your potty and get throwbacks to the times when you were a toddler. Inside that bucket, there's a plastic bag tucked within another. Once the inner bag is filled with solid waste and toilet paper, you seal it up tight with a couple of cable ties. Then wrap the outer bag around it and secure it in the same way. After that, the bucket is covered with a plastic lid and shipped off to New Zealand for proper disposal. Why New Zealand? I don't know. I know you're curious since I only touched upon number 2. Number 1 rule: collect your waste in 20-liter barrels. Unlike your more serious discharge, this barrel won't be shipped to New Zealand, as it can be treated right there at the base. Once you're done, make sure to wash your hands. Ha, gotcha! You can't do that, you princess. Just hit the hand sanitizer to clean your hands. Now, if you want a drink, please do not eat the snow. First off, it's very much protected there. Second, it will only make your thirst situation worse. Rumor has it, if you eat snow to quench your thirst, you can get dehydrated, but it's more of a myth. But the risk of hypothermia is very real, so if you want to have a cup of tea and you need some water, you'll have to boil some ice. Don't worry, it's not expired just because it's millions of years old. The boiling will do the trick. By the way, nothing goes bad there, so you don't even need a fridge to keep food fresh. The researchers living there store their food outside because, in their camps, there are no bugs. Speaking of Antarctic wildlife, it might be tough for you as a tourist to spot any creatures in the wild, but even if you do, please resist the urge to feed them. It's a big no-no to feed, touch, or handle birds or seals, and don't approach or photograph them in a way that disrupts their behavior. Plus, their stomachs might not appreciate what you have to offer. Another thing you have to be super cautious about is lichen. When people picture Antarctica, they usually envision endless snow with an occasional peak of black rock underneath. But believe it or not, plants do grow there. Various types of grass, moss, and lichen. Since these plants take a long time to grow, especially with 6 months of total darkness and temperatures that can plunge -4 degrees Fahrenheit, even in summer, be mindful of where you walk. Stick to the snow And don't step on the lichen, as it's vital to Antarctica's ecosystem. Also, don't leave things on the ground. There's a rule against this to prevent disturbing local biodiversity. Snow is just as protected as lichen. You can't pick it up or make snow angels. So basically, you've got to preserve this precious white stuff. And no throwing snowballs either. There's a tiny loophole in the law, though. There are specific small areas where you're allowed to hang out. You can break the rules if there are no penguin colonies within 12 miles. At a place called Portal Point. Technically, when you're there, you're in the UK. Portal Point is a narrow spot in the northeast part of Recluse Peninsula, on the west coast of Graham Land. When it comes to the delicate balance of Antarctica, leave stones alone too. Remember the butterfly effect? Even a small action can set off a chain reaction. Everyone loves a souvenir, but if everyone takes a rock, there will be none left. So, just a heads up, taking anything, rocks, feathers, bones, or even soil is a big no-no. And if you spot something human-made, hands off. It could be scientific gear. If you find something cool like a fossil, just take a pic and make a note of where you found it. Scientists will appreciate it way more than you will. Plus, you'll get an awesome shot. It's a win-win. It's your first trip to Egypt, and your new friends there invited you for lunch. The food seems a bit dull, so you decide to spice it up with salt and pepper. You don't see it on the table, so you ask the host for it, and you notice everyone's shocked. It turns out, it's a huge insult to the cook when someone wants to change the original taste of the food on their plate. The cook made it that way for a reason, and wanting to spice it up means showing that the dish wasn't good enough. You're used to doing it as a kind gesture around the world, but don't tip waiters, taxi drivers, or hotel workers in Japan. They can get offended because they already get paid for providing you with good service, and there's no need for extra money to make it any better. If you really want to show appreciation, just say thank you. It's okay to tip private guides, tour companies, and interpreters. You can put any amount that feels right to you in an envelope and hand it down to them. If you want to impress your new Japanese friends or colleagues, take some time to study chopstick etiquette. When you master the art of holding chopsticks, remember not to rub them together. People do it to remove splinters, so it might look like you're unhappy with the quality of the pair that your host provided you with. Don't put your chopsticks vertically in your bowl of rice. This way, it can be seen as an offering to the deceased. Don't wave chopsticks in the air or use them to point at things. Both are considered really rude. The same is with moving things with your chopsticks or the hand holding them. It looks disrespectful. Plus, you're likely to spill things. When in Italy, don't order a cappuccino after noon. The locals don't do it because they believe the milk and foam turn this drink into a meal, and it's not good for digestion. Also, be prepared to enjoy your coffee standing at the bar and pay for it before you even order it. First, you pay the cash register, then show the receipt to the server to get your drink. Are you a big fan of chewing gum? Well, you'll have an uneasy time in Singapore. Using, selling, and importing chewing gum is banned there, and you'd have to pay up to several thousands of dollars for doing it. This law was introduced in the 1990s to make the city cleaner and keep the local fast trains up to schedule. When they launched a new transit system, passengers stuck gum onto train door sensors, causing some serious delays. With the new rules, this problem was solved. The no gum policy, along with many other strict rules, did help to make Singapore a really clean and fine city. Pun intended. If you absolutely can't imagine your life without chewing, the local authorities recommend replacing the gum with bananas. When someone asks you to pass them something, like salt at the table in Bolivia, don't give it directly to them. Hand it to the person sitting next to them, and they'll pass it for you. If the person next to you is asking for that little favor, you still can't hand it straight to them. The person next to you will have to help. This table etiquette comes from a superstition that handing something to someone directly into their hands brings bad luck. For the same reasons, you can't reach across the table or stand up to pass something or toss it to someone. And don't forget to keep both hands on the table when you aren't eating. It might look like you're trying to hide something if your hands aren't visible at all times. When you arrive for a meal in Jordan, the hosts may give you some bitter Arabic coffee as a warm welcome. Don't try to stretch it for the rest of the evening. The polite thing to do is empty it fast. Only when everyone's done with the drink do people go back to socializing. As you pass the empty cup to the hosts, make sure to jiggle your wrists. If you just pass it without jiggling, it will mean you're asking for a refill. Don't rush to arrive at an event on time in Venezuela. People might think that you're rude or greedy. The polite thing to do is to be 10 to 15 minutes late. Events scheduled for 7 o'clock will often begin at 8 o'clock or later. A popular story goes that in the 1980s, a foreign reporter arrived at a press event more than an hour late. When he saw the room was mostly empty, he went to apologize to the host for missing the event. The host then told him he was the first reporter to arrive. It's quite interesting because the clocks in this country have officially been 0.9 seconds ahead of the rest of the world for years. Are you planning to travel by bus in Ireland anytime soon? Don't forget to thank the driver for the ride on your way out of the bus. You'll hear an overwhelming majority of locals do it loudly, as it's basically not optional. Choose the gift wisely if you've been invited to a home in Vietnam. It's okay to bring fruit, sweets, or incense. Handkerchiefs are believed to be a symbol of a sad farewell, and cutting tools are a sign of cutting relationships. So don't bring those. Wrap your gift in colorful paper and don't opt for black. The locals believe this color to be a bad omen. When you present the gift, hold it with both hands. And don't be surprised if the hosts don't open it right away. It's done after the giver has left. Don't leave anything on your plate in India. It's a sign of disrespect for the food you were served. Food is considered sacred in the country, so it would upset your hosts a lot. So, wash and dry your hands before starting the meal. Don't forget to praise the cook and wait for the eldest to stand up before you leave the table. In South India, it's common to serve food on a banana leaf. You gotta fold it over from the top when you're done with the meal. Folding it from the bottom means you weren't satisfied with what you got. It might be a good conversation starter elsewhere, but don't brag about your achievements in Denmark. The locals believe that everyone is equal, so you won't hear them talk about their successful careers or talents or how special they are. And they expect the same from you. If you're looking for a good topic, they'll gladly talk to you about the greatness of their country. The Danes are really proud of it and all its wonders. If you're going on a trip to Germany and plan to drive on the famous Autobahn, make sure to tank up before you hit the road. Stopping, parking, making U-turns, and backing up on this super speedy highway is illegal. Yes, even if you have to stop because you've run out of gas, you'll have to pay a fine since you were supposed to plan things better. And although the Autobahn technically doesn't have a speed limit, watch out if you're passing by urban areas like Frankfurt, Berlin, and Munich, or construction works and heavy traffic. There will be special speed instructions for these spots. In case you're planning to explore Cyprus by car, quench your thirst before you start the vehicle. Drinking anything, including water, isn't allowed while driving on the island. So if you can't resist snacking or drinking behind the wheel, prepare to pay a fine. In Ethiopia, you gotta think twice before choosing a gift for someone. They see it as a debt they'll have to repay in the future. So if you bring something really expensive, the receiver will either have to spend a lot of money on a return gift or feel indebted to you.
We've all dreamed of visiting the Arctic and witnessing the natural wonders of polar bears frolicking on ice floes or the aurora borealis dancing across the sky. Well, sorry to break it to you, But you won't find any tourists flocking to Antarctica anytime soon. Why, you may ask? Let's dive into it. First off, where is Antarctica? It's located in the southern hemisphere, specifically at the South Pole. The Southern Ocean surrounds it, and most of the continent is covered by ice, making it one of the most remote and frigid places on Earth. Now, have you ever met someone who's visited Antarctica? Probably not. It's one of the least visited places on the planet, and only a handful of lucky explorers have seen its interior, which is mostly made up of glaciers and ice fields. But trust me when I say the wildlife and scenery are out of this world. Why shouldn't you travel to Antarctica? Well, for starters, the environment is incredibly fragile and can be easily damaged. Plus, there are no native human populations on the continent, so your travels would essentially be like visiting an uninhabited island. And let's not forget that it's also one of the most expensive destinations to travel to. Despite all that, Antarctica is not exactly guarded like a fortress, but there is an international agreement called the Antarctic Treaty. This treaty was negotiated to prevent any unwanted activity on the continent and bans some forms of testing done there by member states. But the primary reason we can't just waltz into Antarctica is that it has a delicate ecosystem that needs protection. The treaty states that Antarctica should be used for peaceful purposes only and should be free from any human activity that could harm the environment. Scientists are still learning about the continent's unique ecosystem, and our activity and machines could disrupt the delicate balance that exists there. If you're still itching to go to Antarctica, getting permission isn't exactly a walk in the park. U.S. citizens, for example, need to complete a special form and send it to the Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs. And once you're there, you'll need to follow some strict guidelines to protect the environment, like not disturbing any wildlife or taking souvenirs like rocks, plants, or animals. Now, technically, can you live in Antarctica? While there are no laws banning people from living there permanently, it's a very inhospitable environment and unsuitable for human habitation. Temperatures can reach -76 degrees Fahrenheit and below, making it nearly impossible for anyone to survive without the proper equipment and experience. Plus, the nearest piece of land is over 1,000 miles away, making any inhabitants completely cut off from the rest of the world. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll get the chance to visit this unique and fascinating continent. But until then, let's admire it from afar. Let's now talk a bit about the discovery of Antarctica. Unlike other places that were already inhabited, Antarctica never had a native human population. Ancient Greek philosophers had an idea about the continent and called it Antarctos, meaning opposite the bear. The bears it refers to are not the polar ones though, but rather the Great and Little Bear constellations, which are only observable in the northern hemisphere. As a result, the term signifies the opposite of the land of the bear. Whaling and sealing voyages in the late 1700s and early 1800s would venture further south when rounding Cape Horn at the tip of South America. It was known that going further south often meant stronger winds, but also the risk of hitting floating ice of all sizes and of winds and seas that could prove dangerous to the ship and crew. Captain James Cook was the first to cross the Antarctic Circle on January 17, 1773, in the Ross Sea region. He reached a point further north a year later, and though he didn't sight land, he came to within 50 miles and saw deposits of rock held in icebergs, indicating that a more southerly land existed. The first sighting of Antarctica is widely acknowledged to have taken place in January of 1820, during the voyage of two ships under the command of Captain Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen, as part of a 2-year exploratory expedition around the world to discover new lands. The captain's ships were the first to have crossed the Antarctic Circle since Cook. The first undisputed landing on Antarctica didn't happen until much later, on January 24, 1895, at Cape Adare during the whaling voyage of the ship Antarctic, led by Henrik Bull. A small boat with 6 or possibly 7 men on board rowed ashore during calm conditions. You might not believe it, but Antarctica is actually a desert. With all that ice, you'd think it'd be like a winter wonderland with snowball fights and hot cocoa all day long. When we think of deserts, we picture camels and cacti and people struggling to find water. But in Antarctica, it's a whole different story. The struggle isn't to find water, it's to find anything that's not covered in ice. And the average rainfall has been just over 0.4 inches in the past 30 years. That's like a few drops of rain compared to what we're used to. So technically, it's not the dunes or sizzling heat that makes a desert, well, a desert. It's the lack of precipitation. But don't worry, if you ever find yourself lost in Antarctica, you won't have to worry about getting thirsty. Just make sure you bring a jacket and some mittens, because it's cold enough to make you into a popsicle. Not only is Antarctica one of the driest places on Earth, but it's also the coldest, the windiest, and the highest. Talk about overachieving. The penguins and scientists down in Antarctica have at times found themselves in a bit of a pickle when it comes to time. You see, unlike the rest of us on this big blue planet, there is no Antarctica time zone. All the lines of longitude meet at a single point at the South Pole, making it a bit of a head-scratcher when trying to figure out what time it is. Now, you might be thinking, but how do the scientists and researchers keep track of time down there? Good question. They typically stick to the time zone of the country they departed from. However, with stations from all over the world on the Antarctic Peninsula, things can get a little wacky. Imagine trying to coordinate with your neighboring countries without accidentally waking them up in the middle of the night. You might think that not much could survive in a place where the temperature is extremely cold, the sun barely shows up, and the wind could blow you away faster than a tumbleweed. Well, as in many places on Earth, life found a way in Antarctica too. Believe it or not, this frozen continent is buzzing with activity. It's home to billions of krill, which in turn attract lots of seals and more penguins than you can shake a fish at. But don't let their cute and cuddly appearance fool you. Penguins are the ultimate swimmers, with streamlined bodies that would make Olympic medal winners jealous. They come ashore to breed and chill, but their real talent is stealing pebbles from each other and forming mathematically precise huddles to stay warm. Antarctica is also home to the largest species of penguin on Earth. It's called the emperor penguin. Sure, these creatures are flightless birds, but that doesn't mean they can't jump. In fact, some of them can leap up to 120 inches. And let's not forget about the seals. With their furry bodies and special songs, these marine mammals are protected by the Antarctic Treaty, and they're thriving in the cool waters of the Southern Ocean too. But the real stars of the show are the whales. During the Antarctic summer, these huge creatures show up in droves to chow down on the abundant krill. It's indeed like a whale buffet down there.
Antarctica is the most remote continent on the planet. It has 90% of the world's ice, but it's considered a desert because the annual rainfall is only about 8 inches. You'd probably never think it was a desert if you look at it, since it's white and full of wildlife. But Antarctica is not only what it appears to be on the surface. There is so much hidden beneath it, and even above it. Atlantis has long been a mystery for humankind. Did it ever exist? And if yes, where was it located? One of the theories supports that the Atlantean civilization could have thrived and flourished in the Antarctic continent when it was still uncovered by ice. Due to the Earth's cyclical eras, this is the periods of ice and interglacial periods. It was believed that Antarctica was actually a tropical forest. And, well, a recent Google Earth picture found some interesting ruins, buried deep within a lake bed on the icy continent. It's unclear to which civilization these remains belong to, but some theorists believe that it could perfectly be Atlantis. And these frozen Antarctic lakes are holding much more under them. In the 1970s, scientists were surprised to find large lakes under the ice plaques in the frozen continent. Over 400 lake beds are believed to exist under layers of ice. Lake Vostok, for instance, the largest subglacial lake over there, is buried beneath 2 miles of thick ice. There are pristine blue ice caves hidden under there as well. The water in these lakes remains liquid due to the small levels of geothermal heat from the Earth's core. And some scientists believe that some lakes are around 15 million years old. Talk about the old days, huh? Now, amongst the unique phenomena that occur in the continent, let's say Antarctica is home to an extremely weird waterfall. The year was 1911 when Australian geologists wondered about the so-called blood falls. He was extremely puzzled by this red stream of liquid pouring from a small hillside amongst the Antarctic ice. After years of studying it, it was understood what caused the redness was the high iron content in the water. The last piece of the puzzle came when scientists discovered that there was an underground lake with water full of oxidized iron nearby, which was what caused the blood fall to exist in the first place. And speaking of puzzles, this image might be quite puzzling. After all, why on earth would anyone need to take cash to Antarctica? Well, a little history first. Back in 1956, the US founded McMurdo Research Station, which is the biggest science hub in the continent to date. At its peak, the McMurdo Station hosts from 200 to 1,000 scientists. And these people need money to buy coffee, pizza, and other things to meet their daily needs. That's when Wells Fargo decided to install an ATM there. Oh, and they even set a Guinness World Record this way. The Wells Fargo ATM at McMurdo Station is the most southern one in the world. And it's the loneliest ATM in the world as well, as there isn't another one for hundreds and hundreds of miles. The freezing temperatures in Antarctica can make the continent hostile to human life. Actually, Antarctica is the coldest, driest, and windiest continent on our planet. The average temperature along the coast is around 14 degrees Fahrenheit, but as you head towards the Antarctic hinterlands, it gets even colder than that. The interior of the continent can register temperatures of around negative 71 degrees Fahrenheit. On the bright side, these freezing conditions can account for some mesmerizing phenomena, such as ice bubbles. These bubbles frozen inside some Antarctic lakes are bubbles of methane gas. The gas released from the melting of glaciers ends up freezing midway and makes for a beautiful and exotic scene. I guess methane never looked this pretty before, did it? A few years ago, scientists were taken aback by a giant hole the size of the Netherlands in one Antarctic lake. For scale, that's more or less the size of Lake Michigan. These holes are called polynyas, and they are a natural phenomenon in the continent. However, this one is the biggest scientists have ever seen since the 1970s. So you'll understand, polynyas are massive holes in a sea of ice. Most of them occur along the continent's coast, but this new one was found in the Weddell Sea, much farther from the shore. Scientists are still trying to understand how that happened and what its implications are for the climate in the region. There's one feature in the continent that looks completely man-made and has even sparked several theories around the world regarding its origins. I mean, this formation looks exactly like other man-made pyramids, doesn't it? The only difference is that this is actually a natural rock formation and has existed for a very long time. It was first found during an expedition in the 1910s and was kept secret ever since. It was nicknamed Pyramid, but its correct scientific name is Nunatak, which is simply a peak of rock sticking out above a glacier or an ice sheet. There are other famous peaks that look pyramid-shaped, such as the Matterhorn in Switzerland. So no, this really isn't a human construction. We're sure of it. And the list of fascinating discoveries on the ice continent goes on. An artificial intelligence program was analyzing a set of data on Antarctica when it came across a stunning discovery. There may be up to 300,000 undiscovered meteorites to be found in the icy field of the continent. The truth is, meteorites have been falling on the continent for millions of years, but it was only 110 years ago that the first one was found. And guess what? Recently, researchers found a Martian meteorite in East Antarctica. It was the biggest one found in the last 25 years, and it weighed about 165 pounds. Now, usually fire and ice are rather a tricky combination, so I'm guessing you wouldn't say that Antarctica hosts an active volcano, right? But it does. The volcano, known as Mount Erebus, is the southernmost active volcano in the world with liquid magma and lava boiling for eons. Actually, Mount Erebus has been active for over 1 million years, and it's Antarctica's second highest volcano with a height of 12,000 feet. We've mentioned before that Antarctica wasn't always icy, but could you imagine a huge rainforest covering the entire continent? This isn't science fiction, it's actually true. Leaf impressions and fossilized wood clearly show signs of tropical trees in the region. Fossil research has also revealed something magnificent. Antarctica is home to the oldest worm in the world. According to National Geographic, sperm fossils found in Antarctica reveal a long-extinct species of worm that is around 50 million years old. Scientists claim that this discovery is beyond important to studying some evolutionary relationships and say that this was only possible due to the freezing of such samples for thousands of years. Antarctica is a continent rich in biodiversity. Penguins, polar bears, and seals are just some of the animals we know that exist down there. But there is also a rare and fascinating species of fish that inhabits Antarctic waters. Popularly known as the see-through fish, this species is as bizarre as it is beautiful. This fish had to adapt to survive the cold water temperature in Antarctica, so much so that it evolved into a unique being. As well as a transparent body, this fish has transparent blood, making it completely see-through. This is because they lack the protein hemoglobin, which gives blood its red color. Pretty neat, huh? When you think of Antarctica, you probably think of icebergs, right? So here are some fun facts about it. Did you know that icebergs have a lifespan of about 3,000 years? And that together with Greenland, Antarctica is one of the world's primary sources of icebergs. Icebergs can reach 600 to 700 feet below the surface of the water, and around 90% of an iceberg is hidden underwater. That's where the expression "tip of the iceberg" comes from.
Now, flying has long become routine for many people, but even frequent flyers sometimes don't know about things you should never do on a plane. Ooh. No bare feet on a plane. It's one of the biggest no-nos of air travel. Even if we omit the topic of unpleasant odors. The airplane floor is extremely filthy. People with contagious foot problems might have been walking the aisles barefoot before you. There's likely to be a lot of dirt left after previous passengers. And don't even get me started on the floor in the lavatories. Ew. If your feet need some freedom, take off your shoes, but at least wear your socks, or bring along a pair of light slippers. Keep in mind that the pressurized air in the passenger cabin is just as dry as it is in the Sahara Desert, with only about 20% humidity. That's why your skin may feel discomfort after a flight. But wouldn't it make more sense to install several humidifiers that could add some moisture? But this extra load would cost airlines lots of money. Plus, the plane's airframe is mostly made of aluminum and other metals, and humid air could lead to corrosion. So, don't forget to bring a moisturizer and use it during the flight. Always secure your tray table as soon as the plane starts moving on the tarmac, and never lower it during the takeoff and landing. It's a security measure, which ensures that you and the other passengers will have a clear pathway in case of an emergency evacuation. Also, keep your seat in an upright position during takeoff and landing. First of all, a reclined seat can seriously slow down an emergency evacuation, since it will block a person sitting behind. What's more, the more backward you're leaning, the harder it is to get into the brace position during an emergency landing. Now try to avoid snoozing during or right after takeoff and landing. For one thing, it's not the best thing for your health. The main problem is that the air pressure inside the cabin changes very quickly during these phases of the flight. This, in turn, affects the air pressure in your ears. It's important to be alert during this time to relax and open up your ears, for example by yawning or swallowing frequency. Chewing gum works for me. If you're sleeping, you can't do this, which can lead to permanent damage. And of course, there's a safety issue. Most accidents happen during takeoff and landing. If you're sleeping during these stages, you might not be alert and conscious enough if an emergency happens. Now, this next recommendation comes from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. According to them, you might want to skip on hot drinks on a plane. The water used to make tea or coffee doesn't come from bottles, it's regular tap water. And water tanks on airplanes are often old and full of bacteria. In 2004, there was a study which found that more than 12% of water samples contained harmful bacteria. But if you still decide to have a cup of hot beverage on a plane, never pour coffee or tea on your own. Flight attendants are trained to handle this task in crowded aisles of a moving airplane and won't accidentally burn you or other passengers. Now, it's probably better if you don't order Coke on a plane. The cabin pressure, so low up in the air, causes a lot of foam. For apparent reasons, flight attendants don't want to serve you a cup filled with froth. That's why they'll fill only half the cup, then wait for the bubbles to settle, and then finish pouring. That can take ages. Keep your air vent open. This way you'll minimize the spread of germs. Planes have high-quality air filters. They'll catch up to 99% of all airborne germs, so you should be safe there. But make sure to wipe that tray table. With 8 times more bacteria than the toilet flush button, it's the dirtiest place on board. Another thing you should avoid is leaning your head on the window if you have a window seat. You never know who occupied your seat before you, and, in any case, the glass is likely to be covered with germs. Say no to backless sandals and high heels on a flight. I do. There are very serious safety reasons for such a request. The first is that both these types of footwear make it very difficult to evacuate the aircraft fast. If you wear high heels, you will anyway have to leave them behind in case the crew is using emergency slides during an evacuation. The heels are very likely to damage the slide, so off they go. Now ask yourself, do you really fancy running away from the airplane barefoot? I'll answer that for you. Nope. Instead, wear sturdy shoes with a solid sole. In this case, you won't find yourself standing on the hot tarmac or in the weeds without any footwear at all. Don't stuff heavy objects into overhead compartments. Your things may not stay inside during severe turbulence, and while falling out, they will injure you and other passengers. Ow! That's why, if it feels difficult to lift something into the overhead compartment, better put it under the seat in front of you or elsewhere. Now, don't blame the pilots for the hard landing. When you experience it in bad weather, it might be intentional. If the runway is covered with water or snow, the plane has to touch down hard in order to break the water layer and prevent aquaplaning. Otherwise, the water can perform the role of a lubricant, and the plane won't be able to brake or respond to any control. Deploying an emergency slide when there's no emergency is a very bad idea. It can cause hour-long delays and cost airlines thousands of dollars to pack the undamaged slide back into its container. Why would someone do it? Apparently, some think it'll help them get off the plane faster. Well, they're an idiot. Don't be one yourself. Just keep in mind that it doesn't work this way. Don't ignore the instructions of the cabin crew to open window shades during takeoff and landing. This way, flight attendants can see what's happening outside, assess the situation, and act fast, organizing the evacuation. For example, if there's a fire outside one exit, they will redirect passengers toward another door. Avoid carrying spray deodorants or shaving cream in your carry-on baggage. Both these things tend to explode mid-flight and therefore aren't allowed on board the airplane. A much better idea is to choose stick deodorants. You also mustn't keep power banks in your checked luggage, and if you want to bring one on board, its capacity shouldn't be more than 20,000 milliamps. Besides, you shouldn't use them during the flight since they might catch fire. In general, lithium batteries are safe to use, but since they're high energy, they can catch fire if they're not treated with care, misused, or if there's a manufacturing fault. Such batteries have been the cause of quite a few fires on board airplanes, as well as during ground handling. Do not worry about airport scanners, they won't harm your health. Otherwise, airport employees wouldn't be able to stay near them without special clothing. Even when you're passing by a baggage scanner, the risk is minimal. And the last one, don't act like a jerk on board. Behave yourself. I know you will. Also, never try to land a plane on your own. Nah, don't laugh, I'm not kidding. In movies, they often show us that something happens to the pilots and they can't land the plane. And that's when the main character, a very skillful person, starts their game. Unfortunately, it's close to impossible to do it in real life. Even if a person is a genius, is fond of computer simulators that match the real model of an aircraft 100%, and is ready to follow all the instructions from the ground, they're likely to fail due to one simple aspect: stress. It is true that there have been cases throughout history when amateurs landed smallish private planes after the incapacitation of a pilot. However, there has never been a case of a non-professional pilot landing a commercial passenger airplane. It's only in the movies.
If you're going on vacation, I'm sure you forgot to pack a couple of useful items, like a crayon or a pillowcase. I have collected the best travel tips for your ultimate vacation. You should carefully think about when you are planning to go somewhere. In case you have some kind of flexibility, just forget about going on a trip in July. You don't need to travel during the busy season. It's too expensive and there are way too many people. The best time to travel is during the shoulder season, which is between the high and low seasons. In Greece, for example, it's April and May. In September, October. The weather is already or still great, but there are fewer people and the accommodation is way cheaper. When searching for flights, always do it in incognito mode. If you do it in the regular mode, the saved cookie files will track your searches, and cheaper flights will be less likely to pop up since you've been searching for a while. Don't give yourself away. Always go incognito. Another trick is to pick a different home country and currency, the one with a better exchange rate. This way you can buy tickets in different currencies that will be way cheaper. Next, when buying the ticket, make a flyer account, no matter the airline you travel with. Airlines gift you miles, and when enough, you can get a free flight. Even if you travel with different airlines, there is no need to miss out on an opportunity. And yes, don't dispose of your plane ticket after the trip until you saw that your miles were posted on your flyer account. Also, if you ever need to cancel a non-refundable ticket, just don't cancel it and don't show up. In case something happens and the flight gets canceled, you will get your money back because no one knew you weren't going to fly anyways. As for picking the seats, if you fly with someone, don't pick the seats next to each other. Keep the middle seat between you, and there will be a higher probability that it won't be booked unless the plane is full. If you're lucky, you'll have 3 seats for the 2 of you. But if you end up getting a neighbor, you can just ask them to switch seats with you so that one of you can sit next to each other with whoever you're traveling with. Most people will be happy to switch. If you have a long layover, use it to your advantage. 6 hours layovers aren't cool. Too long to chill in the airport, but too short to get out. In this case, better opt for longer layovers and use them to explore the city before your next flight. If you're booking a hotel, always join their loyalty program. Just like with plane tickets, it won't hurt, but you will still be treated like a special guest. Also, when checking in, ask for an opportunity for an upgrade. You can get a better room for the same price, and always make sure to let the hotel know if there's any special occasion. Like a honeymoon, anniversary, birthday, or anything. You'll probably end up with some nice perks from the hotel staff. Even though websites for hotel search are cool to use, once you pick the hotel, just call them directly for booking. Websites take fees for posting offers, so everything that appears there will be more expensive. Call the hotel directly to book a room, and you'll get it for cheaper. But don't feel limited by hotels. Airbnbs are a great option, and often you can get luxurious places for cheap. Also, if you don't mind hostels, they can be fun too. You can meet and befriend travelers from other countries, and maybe you can even stay at their place if you ever go to their country. Now off to packing. First off, always make a packing checklist and keep it on your phone. It's hard to remember everything you need right away, so put together the list in a couple of days and add another item as soon as you remember it. This way, you don't forget anything important when packing. To fit more stuff in your suitcase, roll your clothes. This way, they take way less space. Roll all the shampoos and other things that can spill over in a shower cap. This way, even if something explodes, everything inside will still be protected. Also, use packing cubes. They help to organize everything and save a lot of space. Learn to organize your stuff efficiently. A tic-tac box can be a good storage for bobby pins, and they'll all be in place. Use a carbine to keep all hair ties together. Have you packed a pillowcase? You should. It doesn't take much space, but in case you get uncomfortable when traveling, you can just stock the pillowcase with some clothes. Voila! You got yourself a pillow. Also, put a dryer sheet inside your suitcase. This way your clothes will smell nice, even on long trips. Don't forget to make a copy of your passport and carry it in your wallet just in case. And you can also have a scanned copy of it on the cloud. Another good item to keep is a power bank. Those outlets in airports and airplanes don't always work. Also, get a crayon. It'll be handy if you need to write something down. Pens don't work well in planes because of the air pressure, and pencils break. A crayon will always be there for you. Also, a clothespin is another little thing you might want to have. You know when you arrive and want to keep your toothbrush from touching any counters? If you attach the pin to it, it can serve as a stand. Another little but useful thing is a bread clip. Those serve so many purposes. You can use it as a bookmark, attach it to the end of the tape roll, or keep in place your rolled cords in. But most importantly, they are a must for your flip-flops. The V-shaped part often comes out through it. To avoid it, just slip the bread clip underneath the bottom. It'll serve as a plug stopper, and your flip-flops will last. What to wear? Of course, comfort is the first priority. Sweatpants and leggings are way more comfortable than jeans. A comfy jacket will ensure you don't get cold. A fringed scarf is nice to have too. They're fancy and they turn into a cover. Also, make sure you're wearing compression socks. They will spare you from feeling swollen during the trip. Another important part of your outfit could be noise-canceling headphones. They will be a game changer if there happens to be a screaming little human on the plane. And an ultimate trick, mark your luggage as fragile, even if there's nothing fragile in there. This way, it'll be treated better and your luggage will come out in the first batch after the flight. Most people either sleep or surf their phones while traveling, but some travelers can even play board games. But if you need to roll a dice, here comes a problem. If you roll it not carefully enough, you might end up either losing it or crawling under the seats looking for it, which is inconvenient. Just keep the dice in a little transparent plastic container, then shake the container and see what you got. To find cool places to visit, go on social media, check out photos and videos people post from your location, and go to any place that caught your attention. Pickpockets are definitely a thing, but there is a trick. Just make your valuables less attractive to them. Do you have an expensive camera? Put some tape on it as if you fixed it, and the pickpockets will think that it's broken. Do the same with your phone and laptops and whatever else you don't want to be stolen. Have you ever ended up with a bunch of foreign coins after your trip that are totally useless? Some coins and bills are cool to keep from trips as souvenirs, but too much is too bothersome. To avoid it, just donate your leftover coins before you leave the country. A good deed and also less weight in your pockets on your way home.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.